Today we're going to be talking about how to structure a team, a group of people that you are working with, possible ways to structure individual positions, and a great way to kind of get there is to look at conventional fighting forces. We're going to be talking about that today, talking about the traditional setups for different individual positions within U.S. Army structure as a good example of how to possibly go ahead and make a similar structure on your own. Obviously, they don't exactly go one to the other. There's some differences in between, but we're going to talk about how to maybe evolve and adapt a team that you may be working on or maybe a part of to better fit a more effective capability, and also learn a little bit about how conventional fighting forces are configured. So I hope you guys enjoy the episode, and we had a really good time today talking about it, and we'll see you in there. So one of the many times that we went out and did some random mission in some random place in Afghanistan, this one memory sticks out, and it sticks out for the most random reason too. But my platoon was going to basically, we had intel that there was a guy, this singular guy that was supposedly part of like a basically an arms supply chain.
Yeah.
So he was managing routes for like a Taliban to like sneak arms in and out of the country.
Yeah.
Because we're close to the Pakistan border, and so they were, keeping stuff in Pakistan, keeping a lot of caches and stuff like that over in Pakistan, and then having to sneak it in whenever they needed to, use it. And it was just this random, it was intel on this guy. He wasn't like part of the Taliban, but he was like a wealthy Afghan.
Yeah.
And he was supporting the Taliban. And we kept looking for this guy, and it was really weird. And this is just, without a lot of context, it might not make a lot of sense, but it's actually pretty simple when you think about it. This guy would operate in this village, like this random village is where he would go and like run the logistics, supposedly. We never found him there, but then he would live and sleep at this other village, like kind of farther away. And so he had like a house in both locations. We'd always try to go find him at where he operated his business. I'm using air quotes. And we never found him there. Well, finally, somebody got a bright idea to just go to where he sleeps, which, yeah, why didn't we do that to begin with? So we did a super stealthy, dismounted operation. So no trucks, no helicopters. It was relatively close to our COP, actually, our combat outpost. So I remember leaving just before dark, nods mounted, knew it was going to get dark.
Yeah.
Rolled out, platoon, plussed up a little bit. We brought some specialty team people with us. Like we had a dog handler, and we had like a intel team. I'm trying to remember what they were specifically called, but basically like kind of like we were going to run a key leader engagement, but we were definitely set up to bag this guy up,
Yeah.
So we went to this village, and it's like middle of the night when we get there, and we've got our element like nice and spread out. We pre-briefed everything, so we completely surrounded this town. And it was like, in Afghanistan, there's no natural light, there's no artificial light, really. There's not a lot of electricity or anything like that. They have it, but it's just dark, like at nighttime. And so all you have to go off of is like ambient light. Well, thankfully the skies there are actually pretty clear. So you get a lot of starlight. Like some of the best starry nights I've seen in my life were in Afghanistan, especially because you got like nods on and stuff, you know,
Yeah.
rocking night vision. So you're looking up, you're like, holy crap. But I remember on our way there, there was I wasn't going to even tell this part, but I remembered this part. On our way there, we were walking through this, like, we had to cross through this wadi, which is like a dried out riverbed. And we're moving super quiet, but we're moving pretty quick. You know, we're clipping right along. No talking. It's all hand and arm signals and stuff like that. And I remember having there was a couple guys in each platoon that actually had suppressors. So they like issued suppressors to a few guys, which for regular infantry dudes, that's not super common.
Yeah.
But they did it so we could quietly take something out if we needed to. Specifically like dogs, you know. So I remember being mad because I didn't get one. I was like, oh man, but it is what it is. I don't even remember who had them. It didn't really make a lot of sense, but so basically, you know, they were distributed, I think, to the riflemen in each team.
Yeah.
I think there was a total of like 4 that got issued out or something like that, maybe 3. But we're crossing over this wadi, and I remember seeing all these like glowing eyeballs just start literally coming out of holes in the ground. And I was like, what in the world? Like everyone kind of stopped. Like someone threw up like a halt sign, you know, in the movement. And we like watched as this pack of wild dogs just like came out of the ground. Like dogs over there are not normal. Like they're not like just domestic dogs. Like they're nasty, mangy, like wild animals, you know. They actually don't really like dogs over there even. Like some people do privately own dogs for like crop management and stuff like, or herd management. Crop management. They're just gardening away. No, herd management. And they're like big sheepdog type dogs. But anyways, so we're crossing through and like we see all these glowing eyes, like our IRs like reflecting off of their, you know, we can see their little green glowing eyes in our night vision. And we just kind of like circumnavigated it. They were, I mean, you could hear them all like, you know, like growling.
Yeah.
I was like, holy crap. It was super creepy. And like you know, when you're moving in formation, like you have to maintain your sectors of fire, you know, like you have to maintain 360-degree security. I remember like looking around because I was in the Bravo element. So I was like back a little bit so I could see like the Alpha team up there. Actually, I think I was with the platoon leader. I can't remember for sure. No, I think I was in the Bravo team. Anyways, I could see the Alpha team up there, and I was in the Bravo team, the lead squad because we're in full platoon. So it was our squad up front with Alpha Bravo, and then I was in this second squad in the back because we're heavy weapons. So we only had 2 squads. We weren't like a regular line platoon that has 4 squads. You know.
Yeah.
Anyways, so I remember seeing like everyone's barrels just like pointed at those dogs, like what the heck? And then you started hearing the whispering, like, just go around it, just go, like, because we're trying to maintain, you know, stealth and stuff. Thankfully, they didn't charge us or anything. They kind of came out and like barked a little bit and like growled a little bit. It was pretty creepy looking, but they literally came out of like holes in the ground, which was weird. Well, anyways, we got around that and we went up to this village and we snuck into this village and separated out. We all had predetermined areas we were supposed to go. And I remember sitting down, and this was at a really weird point in Afghanistan where so I was there in 2011. Towards the end, I want to say towards the a little bit past the last half of our year there, they randomly came out with this rule where we couldn't do night raids anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which was really dumb. And the whole idea being like we're trying to pull back from a military presence and be more of like a policing presence. Yeah, which was dumb. Anyways, but
weird.
The gray
the police
area
never
was,
do anything at night.
I know. right? It was freaking dumb. It was just part of trying to like change the
culture,
tempo, I guess.
Be a little bit more like, hey, we're your friends,
Yeah.
not your enemies.
But the gray area is we could go in if at night. We just couldn't. We could go into the village, but we couldn't
wait till sunrise before you hit something.
Yeah, when you were gonna hit a door or like hit a building,
hey, dusk or dawn, man.
You waited till sunrise, and sunrise was used very loosely. Like you get a little bit of light on the horizon, and you're hitting.
That's that old school tactics, anyways, man.
Yeah. So the goal was always to do your perimeter and completely like set up shop in the middle of the night. So we got there I don't know, it was probably 4:30 in the morning, you know.
Yeah.
And several hours of movement to get there because we went all dismounted so we could be really quiet and not be seen. That's the thing too, is they got spotters everywhere. Like they watch everything you're doing. So
yeah.
That's kind of why we left in the late hours too, was to be concealed. And then we actually went in a weird direction. Like we didn't have to go through that wadi crossing and stuff just to avoid, like, you know, this guy getting alerted, this guy getting called, because this guy was protected, you know.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, it'd be the same scenario if someone had evaded us, you know, like my boy, he's only 4 years old, and if he saw like some militant person cruising around like close to our town, he would probably come tell me like, hey, I saw this guy and he's in military gear. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So you can't be seen by anyone in that environment.
Yeah. And if you are seen, you need to be seen going somewhere else, you know, which was kind of the idea. And then when it was super dark, where it's all nods and you're concealed under, like, no one's going to see you as long as you're moving smart.
Yeah.
And you're not like having to shoot a bunch of weird dogs in the middle of the night, which thankfully we didn't. Then we kind of skirted around and came back down from a different direction into this village. So we're set up, we're sitting there and we're waiting. And I'm not going to lie, I was getting sleepy. Like I'm sitting there like kind of doing the old heavy eye McGee, dude, just posted up. Like I've got my security, or I've got my sector, and I'm like, okay, this is getting annoying. Like I'm like looking at my watch, and I'm like, oh, dude, we got some time to just kind of just randomly sit here, you know?
Yeah.
And but you're staying alert, and actually, for regular listeners of the podcast, you'll know this name, but Mr. Andrew Register was with me, sitting right next to me. We were both in the same team, so he was sitting there, you know, like 10 yards from me or whatever. We had our little spacing set up around this thing, and we were kind of like kept like visually checking in with each other. Like we'd kind of look at each other and just kind of like, you know, flip each other off or something, you know. just typical, just, you know, just trying to stay awake, but also trying to just like maintain your humanity just by like not fading into the landscape, dude.
Yeah.
Just trying to like, okay, my buddy's still there, he's awake too, that's good, you know.
If he can do it, I can.
And so the sun starts kind of coming up, and I remember and I'm like, okay, well, we were told we weren't part of the actual like raid. We were going to maintain security. We were actually at the back of the house. We were at the back of the target house, and so we were looking for squirters. You know, if which is basically just if somebody like jumps out a window or goes out the back door and we called it squirting, like they squirted out. You know, that's you can wrap those guys up. And I remember being like, dude, if this guy comes out, I'm just full blown like tackling this dude. Like I told Register, I was like, anybody comes out, like I'm just gonna spear him. Like I'm gonna full on just shoulder check this guy into the dirt, you know. And he's like, yeah, dude, yeah. So, but anyways, we're sitting there, and it's getting ready to be time. You know, the sun's coming up, and so we're like, okay, cool. Like you get that like second wind, you know, when you're like, when you get to the next phase of something, you're like, okay, we made it. Like, let's, so I'm kind of amped up now, and I'm like, yeah, they're getting ready to go. and we're looking at our time because they had a time they were going to go. They're like, we're going to hit at this time. So I'm looking and it's like, 15-ish minutes away. And I'm like, all right, sweet. So we can start to kind of see around. Like we're still, our nods are still down, but like it's starting to get, like there's enough lighting now that it's kind of, you're starting to blend between, do I need nods? Do I not? Yeah. So usually when
using both eyes at that point, one for regular vision, and one for MVGs.
And usually me, like it's just, I just was more comfortable this way. When it got to that point, I usually flipped my nods up because I was like, all right, I'm kind of in this weird, random like transitional lighting. And it's kind of actually, I think it's inhibiting to be under nods at that point.
I think so too.
So I flipped my nods up and looked over at Reggie, and he's just kind of like hanging out. And I'm like, all right. And we're like looking around, and I'm now in the distance. I see like dogs like stretching and waking up, like they're all like, I'm like, dude, we snuck in here. The dogs didn't even freaking wake up,
Yeah.
You're starting to feel kind of like a wraith or something. You're just like, dude, no one knows we're here. Like mission accomplished. Roosters are crowing, starting to cock-a-doodle-doo.
Get their days going.
Yep, getting them hens up to start laying them eggs. And, the sun's starting to come up faster and faster because in Afghanistan, I mean, in big contrast to Alaska where we're at, when the sun comes up, the sun starts just coming on up, Yeah. It's not like Alaska where the sun rises for like eight days and then, it never actually comes up, at least in the wintertime. But and then in the summer, it's just always up. But anyways, so we're sitting there, and I just hear this, like, from the distance, I just hear this, like, it's like, I'm like, what? And it's so slow and, like, crazy sounding that I'm like, what? Like, I like wiggled my ear. Like I remember like grabbing my earlobe and like pulling it to try to like pop my ear because it like resonated in a weird part of my ear. And I'm like looking around, and then I see it out in front of me, dude. And I'm not joking. It was like probably 2 inches long, and it was so fat. Like it was like, I'm trying to think of something to compare it to. Like those little rolls of pennies, like the cardboard rolls that like, when pennies are like rolled up. It was like that size of some kind of creature, dude. Some kind of bug that was just like flying across my face, and its wings.
Wait, you're talking about the diameter of the pennies or the height of the
like
pennies?
All like probably, well, maybe, I don't know how long. I can't think of how long those are.
They're like that. They're like probably like,
it was probably
3 inches, probably.
Yeah, I'd say 2.5 to 3 inches long. Like enough
tall,
to be like,
though.
Yeah, so imagine.
So it's diameter then. For its circumference.
For if you're a nerd, this will make sense. If you're not, then look it up. But Slave One in Star Wars, Boba Fett's ship. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
It flies upright. Like it flies like, it doesn't fly like an airplane where the cylinder, the fuselage is horizontal. The fuselage is like vertical. So, and the wings like stick out. It literally looked like that. Like it was like a beetle. I couldn't really tell because it's still kind of dark, but I'm just looking at it. It's like right in front of my face, just going by, and just sounds so loud. And I'm like, what? And its wings are just like flapping so fast that they just look solid. They're just like sticking out sideways. So it literally,
some kind of cicada.
I don't know what it was, dude, but it flew. I just remember it flying across, and I was like watching it go, and then it flew. Basically by the time I look over at Register, I see him just turn his head with these wide eyes, like. And so he saw it too, and his eyes are, and he just goes, "What is that?" And I was like, I don't know. And he's like, I think that was a Chinook. And I was like, dude, but it was the timing. I wish everyone could see like what I saw, but it was just the timing of like me realizing that was just something ridiculous, like something you'd only see in Afghanistan, like a weird creature of a bug. And me like looking over at him with this face, like this concerned, like wide-eyed face, like what? And he's just slowly turning his head from his security sector to just look at me like, like.
Have you ever looked up what kind of bug that was?
No, I haven't. And we just, we literally were blown away. And and so we sat there and wondered forever what it was. And we made jokes about how it had its own, like restricted flight path and stuff like that. Like it was a big old crazy bug, and it was so loud. Like I don't know how it didn't wake the whole village up. But long story short, they hit the building. That guy wasn't there. So
no way.
Yeah, he wasn't there.
Yeah, that was the buildup right there, man.
Yep. So yeah, we went, and I think he actually rode out on that bug. Like I'm pretty sure he was on that bug and left. And I failed at my job and just didn't get him, dude.
Just let him by, dude.
He just evaded us on bugback, dude.
Man, I'm trying to find it. I can't find it. I don't know what the heck it is.
Oh,
dude, it had been a beetle probably.
It was a beetle, yeah, because beetles kind of like they're so heavy that their shell opens up.
Do you remember cicadas from like the Northeast?
Yeah, it wasn't. I don't think it was a cicada.
Or no, June bugs. That's what I'm thinking. June bugs.
It was bigger than a June bug.
Dude, June bugs are big.
No, dude, June bugs aren't that big.
Did I ever tell you? Yeah, dude, at our grandparents' house in Virginia. Dude, I took a baseball bat to one of them while I was flying. Dude, I'm dead serious. I gave it the old Babe Ruth swing, dude, on this bad boy, and it made like contact. Like I hit, like the sound that it made was like me hitting like a can of soda or something.
Yeah,
like
dude,
an empty can of soda.
I remember that.
Dude, that thing flew down the hill, like from me hitting it, the direction I hit it, and still was able to recover without touching the ground.
Oh, yeah, dude.
And flew. And I was like, dude, it's coming for me. But
those are June bugs are the ones that are like greenish, like kind of a
they got the
multicolored shimmer green. Yeah.
I mean, they're big enough for me to hit with a baseball bat.
Yeah, it was bigger than that.
And like for me to feel the contact of it hitting the bat, like in my hands.
It was probably cicada size. Like cicadas are quite a bit bigger than a June bug.
Yeah. I don't know.
But I don't know. It was some crazy thing. And it sounded like it was.
I mean, it was probably bigger. I mean, everything's bigger over in those like really hot environments.
Yeah.
It's like when I went down to Louisiana for Fort Polk, I was like, why is every bug why does it look like we're in Jurassic Park here?
Yeah.
Like, it's just that environment.
Dude, there were weird bugs there.
Large.
Some of the weirdest bugs I've ever seen. Shout out to anybody that lives in Louisiana because you out here. But
it's weird, man. They got like that
nasty
Texas heat, but mixed with that Florida like humidity. And it's like, what is happening right now?
Swampy, just sticky, and just the weirdest bugs I've ever seen. Like when we went to JRTC and did our pre-deployment like spin up, it was we're there for like I think it's like 2 months or something. I think you're there for like just shy of 60 days, but. Dude, yeah, I remember being like, you'd go to the line of porta potties, like they literally just had like a freaking, like the latrine area was just a line of just nasty, just
gross,
just soiled porta potties, and on the walls of those things were just scientific research develament.
Oh, I thought we were going to talk about drawings or something.
No, weird, like literally on the outside walls, like outside, trying to get in, like, or just crazy bugs that didn't make any sense. I was like, what in the Stephen King novel is going on right now? But, should we blast on into it? We got a pretty cool episode today. What are we talking about today, dude?
We're kind of going over, I mean, it's kind of a lot actually, but kind of individual responsibilities in your team and squad. If you have more team than squad, but if you have a squad size element, we're going to kind of touch on that as well.
Yeah. While also probably giving a little bit of a breakdown of how the military does it.
Yeah.
And just kind of historically too, as far as, I think it's important to understand a conventional military configuration, at least at the infantry level. I think that's a valuable thing to understand how it can apply, and also how it doesn't. I think that too is very important. So
yeah, I think so too. So minimum numbers, I guess, for what you think you can successfully pull off. Well, let's start with a team.
Okay. Kind of work up.
Yeah. I mean, your team can be larger than this. I think your minimum, though, is definitely like 3 guys, probably. Like 3 to 4 guys. In the infantry, it's 4 guys.
4, including the team
like
leader.
your military standard stuff.
Yep.
It's 4 guys. So,
and I like the number 4 because for a team, I think that is a good number to shoot for because it allows you to have you can wing out your and you can split up your team, into 2-man teams. If you have a 3-man team, that's awesome, but you're never going to split that up. That would maintain its 3-man configuration at all times. Whereas a 2 or a 4-man team can be
broken
split,
up. Yeah.
If needed.
Yeah, so and we'll just kind of stay in the more military vein first, actually, just to make it less confusing.
Yeah.
So 4-man team, if you have enough to do a squad, you're looking at 10 basically. You could do you could technically do 9 and have like an RTO within one of the teams if you wanted,
or run the squad leader as an RTO.
Yeah,
which is actually kind of common in smaller platoons.
Yeah,
and RTO is running radios.
Yep.
Yep.
It's actually a radio telephone operator is what it stands for. So yeah, and then now we're just gonna, I guess we'll just break down kind of like what the individual jobs would be, but like,
well, let's line out the teams and squads and stuff a little bit more. I'm gonna go all the way up to the platoon level just for everyone's own kind of understanding of how it's formatted. Now, this is going off of the Army because we were in the Army. The Marines actually run the Marines have done, the Marine Corps has done some interesting things. They have had a squad with 3 fire teams in it, and then they've gone down to like back to the standard kind of Army configuration, and then back again. So, and then now they actually run a 15-man squad, which is interesting. Instead of like a 10 or a 9-man squad, but. So again, this is kind of going off the Army, and Marine Corps units use the same configuration as well. This is probably the most common. But you have 2, so starting at the team level and kind of working your way up, you've got a fire team of 4 people.
Yep.
And then you have another fire team, and now you have an Alpha and Bravo team. They all fall under a squad. And in that squad, you have a squad leader, and like Steven said, usually an RTO. So somebody that's running radios. If you don't have that, then that role falls to the squad leader.
Yep.
So a minimum of 9 men would make a squad. In each of those teams, Alpha Bravo, you have a team leader. So basically you have a team leader in both and then 3 men underneath. Moving up from that, you have your platoon, which the platoon has 4 squads. So
you can have less as well, but
you can. Yeah, I'm talking about a standard line platoon, line infantry platoon. So
which both of us did not have, which is funny enough.
Yeah, we did not.
We only had 3, and you guys sound like you guys had 2.
Yeah, we had 2 squads.
Okay,
and then we had basically everybody else had like a specialty position, like RTO or whatever.
Yeah.
Like we didn't have squad RTOs. We had a platoon RTO.
Okay.
And then our squad leaders were also running radios. And then our team leaders ran radios. So team leaders. Whoa, team readers, dude. Anyways, no, I was going to make a joke, but I'm not going to. So what was I saying? Okay, so yeah, so a basic line infantry platoon. You have 4 squads. 2 squads make up what's called a section. So, and this is where SOP can kind of like, for some of you guys that were in the infantry, you might be like, I've never heard of a section before. It's like, well, then you suck. No, I'm just kidding. You just, that's actually what it is. So a section is 2 squads. So you have 2 sections in a platoon. And then at your platoon headquarter position, you've got leadership, you've got a platoon leader who's usually an officer, and then, or who's always an officer, I should say.
Yeah.
And then a platoon sergeant. So, and then that's basically mirrored throughout the entire structure of the army.
Then it can go up even farther than that.
Yeah, it goes up even farther. Then you go up
to your company, and your company's got first sergeants, and you usually have 4 platoons. Yep. I don't know because I'm not in a normal one, but for a normal line, I think it's 4 platoons.
It's technically, I think it's 5 because you have a headquarters platoon.
Okay.
But the headquarters platoon is much smaller. It's not like a full fighting platoon. It's just it's like a 5th kind of, specialty platoon that's made up of the rest of your personnel that support a company, like your supply guys, your, all
mortars.
Yeah.
Usually are in headquarters. Our sniper team was in headquarters.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So all your specialty role people are in that headquarters platoon. So, and then, going up from there into battalion, that's where you get into, each battalion has 4 companies in it, and then a headquarters company. So it kind of, and even at it kind of mirrors that same structure all the way up. Then you start getting into brigades and divisions and stuff like that. So that's not as important. We'll keep it down to the more platoon level. But even within that platoon itself, you're going to have kind of like a headquarters section, which is making up your, platoon RTO, your PL, your squad, your platoon sergeant, and you might have your medic would be falling into that section.
Yep.
And then also you probably, if you're deployed, you will have a Charlie, so a mortarman assigned to you if you're a standard line platoon. We didn't have one, but sometimes we brought one out on mission. I think we actually did bring one with us on that mission I just talked about. And then, so when you're moving as a platoon, you've got like a full line platoon. You've basically got one section in the front. You've got your headquarters section in the middle. So that'd be, again, your platoon sergeant, medic, platoon RTO, platoon leader, blah, blah, blah. And then you have a whole section behind you. And again, a section's made up of 2 squads. And then each one of those squads is made up of 2 teams. So, a full line platoon, you've got, around 50 people in it. It's a big group of people.
I'd say at least.
So that's kind of, I think that's just important to understand.
And it's pretty easy to figure out once you've figured out even the basic level. Like you said, it's basically just mirroring its way up to the top, as far as leadership goes. So if you were to have more guys that you train with than just from a Minutemen perspective, if you had enough guys to form an entire platoon, all you need to know is how a squad was assigned in order to figure out how a platoon would be designed, because basically it just walks its way up a family tree, basically. So
and then there's things you can do, if you have 2, you can downsize teams down to 3, what you were saying. You can technically do it down to 2, but I would rather have less squad structure. So if you're trying to make a structure, you've got a weird number of people, you can start to play around with 3-man teams, but then, I have enough for a squad of 3-man teams, but I don't have enough for a second squad, so I can't make a full section. Well, at that point, then you'd make some other specialty teams that would basically fall into a mini squad, so you could play around with that, but
which we will get into a little bit more as well, but
cool. Yeah. So now you can talk about the roles. I was just, I wanted to kind of explain that structure. It's pretty much, there always is a mirror of sorts. If you've got this side, you've got another side, or you've got kind of a front and a back is better kind of how to think about it. And you've always got the ability you've got redundancies, first of all. So you've got 2 of everything kind of.
Yeah.
And at least I should say. And then also you can always flank. You can always do support by fire movements. So everything's kind of based around the buddy at the lowest level. Like you'll never have just a single person doing something.
Yeah.
You're always going to have a buddy. Even you see that all the way to like fighter groups when you're just talking about like Air Force, like fighter jets and stuff, with all this weird, crazy balloon crap that's been going on and UFO weirdness. It's not just been like one lone F-22 out there soaring around. It's been a group, which is 2 at minimum. And then most often it's actually 4. They probably have like a backup, group as well. So everything's done in pairs at a minimum.
Yeah.
But
anyways.
Yeah.
I mean, how cool, though, going to that really quick, like to be the fighter pilot that got to shot the balloons down, man.
I mean, is it cool or is it like weird?
Well, it's kind of weird, but it's still like, dude, I actually got to go do that.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you don't get very many opportunities to go actually shoot something down that's flying around.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently it's happening like crazy.
Apparently, yeah. Well, that's a different story altogether. But anyways, yeah, we're not even going to get into that because that's just going to turn this podcast into like a 5-hour podcast real quick. But yeah, so within each team, you kind of broke it down, but you're going to have, I'll just kind of breeze through this and then we'll kind of go over the actual individual responsibilities of kind of everyone. But so for your alpha team, like if all you have is a team, you're going to have a team leader, you're going to have an automatic rifleman, you'll have a grenadier, and you'll have a rifleman.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're talking squad size element, you basically just duplicate that for the Bravo team. So you'll have another team leader, another automatic rifleman, another grenadier, another rifleman. The only addition and where you're getting like that 9 to 10 is you'll have a squad leader that actually runs both teams.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you do want to do someone that's like actually a designated RTO that's assigned to the squad leader, that's pretty common as well. That's how we did it. And so you'd have a radio telephone operator that was assigned to that.
Yep.
So, and there's kind of reasons behind why we did that and why. So it kind of depends on how spread out you operate.
Mm-hmm.
So from the reconnaissance world, we're pretty spread out, and most are, I don't want to say that our platoon sergeants and squad leaders and all that stuff didn't know how to use like radios, but they didn't know how to use them as well as like our RTOs that were like going out and taking classes and stuff like on how to, like our guys were going out with ASIPs and like talking to people in Europe.
Yeah.
With makeshift antennas.
Yeah.
Like they made them on the fly and were able to talk to people. Like they were just good. So, but anyway, so getting into the kind of roles that these, individuals take on. Obviously, team leaders is probably your biggest responsibility role. So we'll get into that first. So kind of, it gets a little bit weird because your Alpha and Bravo team leader actually do have slightly different roles.
Right.
But they can be interchanged for sure. Like, and everyone should be able to do everyone's job because it's kind of that next man up mentality. And that's even in the big army. Like that's not just like, from a Minuteman perspective, but your Alpha team leader for sure is definitely very responsible for navigation. Like incredibly, he's going to be the guy that makes or breaks the movements. I have heard of people taking their team leader and swapping it out for the rifleman and having the rifleman be the leader, but honestly, I just don't see why you would do that. Your team leader has way more experience. More than likely, it's been doing it for a longer time, and it's more accountable as far as like if you screw up a movement. It's not like, hey, yeah, you threw out your like guy who had the least experience out front and had him run the entire element like into a draw, and you guys all got like, I don't know,
ambushed,
jungle.
Oh, jungle rot.
Yeah, you got the jungle rot on the toes and stuff. I don't know, or ambushed, even worse. So your team leader. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I see that a lot, and we've been asked that actually. We've had people ask us in the past, like whether it was asked from other episodes where we've kind of gotten into this stuff before, or like from some of our posts on Instagram. I've seen the question come up a couple of times, like, well, wouldn't you want your your team leader is obviously pretty important. Wouldn't you want him to not be in the front? And I've seen that thrown out there quite a bit and asked a lot, and I've actually heard people utilize that in tactical doctrine, and I just disagree with it. I think it's first of all, it's pretty negligible. Like it's not, it doesn't work like you're playing a Call of Duty campaign and then you get to the next phase of like the mission that you're on, and then like the enemy populates in front of you.
Yeah, and then
it's not very common to get, like, it's ideal for you to meet contact directly 12 o'clock. Like you're set up to be successful like that.
Yeah,
like you're gonna smoke that enemy,
especially if you're in a wedge
if you're wedged out, and your team leader might be. I mean, theoretically could be subject to incoming fire first, but if you're doing your job right and you're moving correctly, then you're probably gonna walk up on somebody and they're gonna be screwed.
Yeah.
It's not really like that. It's not like you've left your team leader out there to dry. So don't think about it like, I got to protect the pieces of my chessboard. You do in a way, but it's kind of, I'm just saying it's negligible. I think people look too far into that. It's not like you've got this, it's not like you're driving your team leader forward on a stick. Like you're going to, you're going to get shot at first.
It's like old school combat where they used to try to hide the officers, like, if we hide our officers because they get like pinpointed and shot at, it's like, I kind of get where that's coming from, but that's coming from like military tactics where they didn't really have that next man up mentality.
Yeah.
I feel like nowadays, even in the big army, at least from my unit, like you could jump, like if you're not a team leader, you should be able to still jump into that role and still be successful.
Yeah.
But also like you said, I mean, if you're doing your job right, it doesn't matter whether you're the point man or if you're at the very back of the team, like you shouldn't be just like tromping through the woods and getting caught. I mean, easier said than done, but I'm just saying, like, it is what it is. You can't value someone over someone else because of, he's more experienced. But it's like, well, yeah, he has more experience, so let's put him up in the spot that's the most dangerous because he's going to be the most successful in that area.
Yeah. Well, and it's not even, I wouldn't say it's the most dangerous due to contact, like due to getting fired at, because
I'm saying most dangerous for like potentially putting someone in a bad, putting the entire platoon in a bad spot.
Yeah, 100%. You want, and that's the point I was trying to make, is that don't sacrifice a position that needs experience for some kind of thought of like, well, he could get shot first, because realistically, like how firefights and when you get into contact really go, that guy has the same odds of getting shot at as anyone else in the movement, because you don't know where you're going to get shot at from. If it is a situation where it's that kind of contact, it's like you're caught off guard, you got ambushed or you started taking pop shots from someone you didn't identify, then who's to say it's not the 6 o'clock or it's not somewhere on your flank. It's just it's negligible, and that's, don't get caught up in that mentality, because I've seen it a lot, and it's an understandable question, especially from people that haven't done this stuff for a living. But yeah, I would say that someone with the most experience, and as you're, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but as you're starting to put together groups that you're training with, if you do have guys that have spent some time in the military, that's where you can start to use them. Also in those leadership roles on those teams.
Also, another thing with where having the team leader as the point man, if you look at, and I would love to do a podcast on this, I just don't know how to be like super successful. I mean, we can do it, but we'd have to just really break it down. But like in word form, I think it'd be a lot easier in like video form where you can actually get visual. But like if you look at battle drills by the United States Army, it's very beneficial to have the team leader in that point man position, because of how when you get contact, obviously you return fire and then you get up on line. Yeah. With cover and concealment, obviously. But that places the team leader not only in the middle of his team, once everyone gets online, especially if you're moving in a wedge, if you do get hit from the 12 o'clock, or even if you get hit from whichever side, basically it's going to put the team leader somewhere in the middle. It's also going to put them next to the automatic rifleman. So I think that's where it's like, he can kind of designate different spots to be, to focus on from your automatic riflemen, things like that. He can help control fire and stuff. And, but yeah, and that's obviously another responsibility as a team leader is you're in charge of all your guys.
Yeah.
Which is incredibly important. And that's not just like in charge of how you fight when you're fighting, but that's also like making sure that they got ammo, that they've got liquid, that they got food, that they're not injured, that they're, you got to take care of your guys. So,
you got to check up on like, a rule of thumb I like to use, is if you're feeling a certain way, there's a high chance that someone else is too. So like if I'm thirsty, like what I liked to do and what I still do is like if I feel thirsty and I drink some water, I'll be like, hey, everybody good on, like just a quick, like on the move, you can like, you good on water? You guys good on water? Like, yeah. Or like if you stop, usually if you're going to stop and do like a lace report, or like if you're just, even if you just stop for a second, and you're able to kind of do a quick little check without moving around too much. It's just kind of something I like to do. And like, it could be for anything, if I'm like starting to get really sore, like if my shoulders are like hurting, we're carrying a lot of weight over a long period of time. That's kind of an indicator to me, like, let me check in. Like, you doing good? You feeling good? Nothing's hurting, Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm good. And usually everything's good, but it's just like trying to stay outside of that, well, I'm doing fine. So I'm going to be, I'm just going to keep, they got to keep up with me,
Yeah.
It's like,
there's a time and place for that, but
there is, but I try to communicate that.
Yeah.
I like to be like, hey guys, we're going to have to beat feet here for the next like 4 miles. You guys good? You good to hard charge for a little bit? Yeah. All right. And then it's kind of a way for them to you kind of give them an expectation, but also you're like letting them know like, hey, I'm not going to really check in on you as much. Like we're having to move here, or or this is going to suck. Like that's something that I really like to do too. Like, hey, we got to move. We got to do a water crossing. Like, let's just push through this. I was like, we're going to have to move like a ways after that. And then we'll change socks and get dry.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is. I'm kind of just making random scenarios up, but whatever it is, I like to really communicate like expectations. It helps me too. Like it helps me mentally to be like, okay, like they expect, this is what needs to happen. This is my expectation of them. And it also shows them that like, oh man, this is what we're doing. Like he's doing it. It's kind of like a leading, and then, you go forward with your action, lead by example,
Yeah.
And I think mentally too, there's just something about that team leader being in the front that, they're doing the thing. They follow me. Like subconsciously, I think that does a lot as well.
Another thing that you also brought up was the fact that your team leaders and stuff will run radios.
Yep.
We did the same thing, like our embedders and so like a little bit shorter range radios. So like our team leaders and squad leaders all had those. Our longer range radios were usually kept for RTOs and stuff like that. That's more like pushing information back to like platoons and stuff like that. That's what we use that for. But I think that's incredibly important too for your team leader and your squad leader, and then your Bravo team leader, obviously to be kind of like, obviously they're not just blowing up the radio because it's not smart to do, but to have that ability as well.
Yeah.
And still have the capability to run your equipment, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, kind of to summarize, for the team leader, I think it's, obviously having good leadership qualities, I think is really important. Understanding land navigation is very important.
Yeah, and how to do route planning. I mean, obviously that's just land navigation in general, but
yeah, and
you're going to get help. Like, I remember all the time on movements, like if we were, because we did pretty long movements and all by foot. I remember when my alpha team leader would be like, man, I don't really know. Do we want to go around this draw? Or do we want to just kind of push through? We'd have like a little stop, and they would kind of like pull out the old poncho and cover up and do like a map check with the red light and stuff. My squad leader would come up to see, and they would kind of discuss. So he would kind of give a little bit of input as well. So it wasn't just like 100% on my team leader, but for the most part, yeah, I mean, that alpha team leader was pretty much dictating where we went at all times. And I kind of look at that as almost like from a football world, like that's the quarterback. Like your team leader is the quarterback, your squad leader is kind of like a coach, and your Bravo team leader is almost like the linebacker on the defense. You know, he's running the defense back there.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, because your quarterback, it's going to make or break your squad. Like he's going to get all the blame put on him if you lose or get killed, you know, or lost. But obviously your Bravo team leader needs to be like a form of defense as well. Like if you do get contact and stuff like that, that's like where those guys shine, is like you're flanking and all that stuff. So,
yep.
But yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, land navigation, obviously. And then, you know, you have to usually, so, and we'll get into this with the other positions, but it's not uncommon. Actually, it's pretty much always the case from my experience for the team leader to be someone who has filled every role in the team over time.
Yeah. Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
They started as a rifleman, as a private.
Yeah.
Then they moved to a grenadier.
Yep.
And did that for a while. Then they became a automatic rifleman. And then it's very common for the automatic rifleman position to soon become, you know, they're next in line to become a team leader.
Yep.
The reason that's important is because they've filled every role on the team, so they understand how each role is used, and they can position them accordingly.
Yeah, it's pretty rare to have someone just skip all the steps. I only saw that one time when I was in, and that's because he went to Ranger School, and it was like a point-proven kind of situation. Not saying he didn't deserve it. He actually was a really good team leader, but he was actually my team leader for a long time, and I think my squad leader even like said, yeah, I'm always going to keep you with him because I had way more experience than him, and I wasn't too prideful not to help him, you know,
right,
to learn like the actual reconnaissance world, because he didn't know anything.
You were the saw gunner.
Yeah.
And that's, and so I guess moving into the automatic rifleman, this needs to be somebody.
And I was going to bring up one more thing on the team leaders. Obviously, and you kind of brought it up, but like leadership skills is important from this position.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying in the Army every single team leader has great leadership skills, but if you're forming together a team, put people where they shine, you know, like, you know, obviously don't just like, oh yeah, well, he's got the most experience here, but he sucks at leadership. And maybe he's not the best person for that job. Maybe he's more like an automatic rifleman kind of guy, because he's really smart. He's really good. He can kind of figure out. It's less that the team leader has to worry about because his most experienced guy is on the automatic rifleman, kind of like my situation that I was in. But, you know, except I wasn't, because I wasn't a good leader. It was just because, you know, that's how it went.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can do that. You know, I don't think you need to like, well, this guy's been here longer. He's been through every position.
Yeah.
You know, like he's done.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
Like if he's not a good leader, he's not a good leader. And
yeah, because I've been on teams and stuff that were run that way, and it doesn't make any sense. Like ultimately,
yeah,
you either end up having another person in the team who's like this. We always called it the silent team leader. It's like they're actually the team leader, but they're, you know, basically through respect and a little bit of just like, you know.
Yeah.
What's the word I'm looking for? Just like putting up with it. You're just like, this random guy is the team leader for some reason. Like, well, like, and I won't say names, but I had a team leader for a short period of time. It was before I was the team leader, and I'm reluctant to say this. I don't know if I should. Basically, he had been in the military for a really long time.
Yeah.
Kind of a like on track to be that lifer E4.
Oh, no.
Yeah. and they were trying to develop him to like kind of push him forward and get him to,
promote.
Let's promote, and I was frustrated, and this is a little bit of like this was probably a little bit of young, like, I mean, I've always been confident and stuff, but maybe a little bit of like arrogance too. Like I was being told I was going to be the guy, and then this guy became the guy for a short period of time. It didn't really work out, and it became clear, but I had to like step aside, and I did, and I've tried to support him, but man, like he was frustrating to work with because he would make really, especially after I had this team leader when I was new that he's still just a buddy to this day. He was solid. He like cared a bunch about his guys. He was always on his guys' side, always making sure you were protected, you were good before worrying about like what leadership needed.
Yeah.
Which might sound weird, but it works good because then you've got a really cohesive team. Whereas this other individual, when he took over, it was all about how do I make
making
leadership
himself
happy?
look good.
Yeah. And then he would just drag us with him.
Which is funny because that actually ends up making leadership not like you, that mentality. But
and then things changed. He ended up going away, and then I was able to kind of, and I definitely leaned on the lessons learned from the previous team leader I had.
Yeah.
But anyways, I think it was a valuable lesson to see many different leadership styles. So I think with all that being said, I agree. Like just because it's someone that's been there, done that, doesn't mean they're going to be a good leader. And it should absolutely be someone that is suited for the position. If it's just because it's a guy that you might have somebody that's working and training with you he was in the Marine Corps for 12 years, but he might just be not the guy that's going to be able to be in that leadership position.
Yeah.
And then, utilize him accordingly. And I think that next role is where you can really put that guy. But at the same time, if you do have someone that is a good leader that has that experience, then that's a great situation, and absolutely utilize the experience and the leadership capability. And also know that leadership, if they're able to learn it, then let them learn it, because leadership is something that can be developed.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think, I 100% agree. And, and I brought that up only because I'm not saying I was just trying to say like your most experienced guy maybe isn't the best fit for the team leader role. But if he has the ability to become a good leader or already is a good leader, then he's by far the best person, because like I said, that's the spot that you want to be you want to have your most squared away dude is the alpha team leader, because he's doing all the navigation. He's potentially like usually heading in at least somewhat of the direction of the enemy, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
So your alpha team's more than likely going to be the one that's getting contact first. Hopefully. You hope. I mean, not saying that your Bravo team doesn't need to be squared away too, because they need to be just as squared away, because it's basically just mirrored of what the alpha team is. So but they know, like, they need to know how to react and actually like control their guys and how to make calls on the fly and all that stuff. So
and
they need
quick.
to be super squared away dudes.
Yeah.
So because like you can just get everyone killed if you're a bad team leader, like, and you're not squared away.
Yeah, and if you are someone that's trying to be that, like if you're listening to this and you're like, man, I already am kind of in that role, or I'm like trying to be, or whatever, or like we're early in our development, but that's, it's kind of been unspoken. First of all, it needs to be lined out. Like, I think it's really important to have, when you get together with guys and you're training and you're doing stuff, especially when you have such a varying degree of backgrounds, you've got civilians that, are just interested in it. Then you've got maybe some law enforcement guys, maybe some whatever. It doesn't matter. There needs to be some clear defined like structure. Structure is really important, especially when like things go bad. You've got to know who's where and what they're doing.
Yep.
It shouldn't be this unspoken, like, yeah, well, I guess, so-and-so would kind of take over or whatever. Like, no, you need to have a kind of a hierarchy, a chain of command. And it's not like a chain of tyranny. And I think that's where a lot of people get concerned, or like a lot of people get, start to get kind of butthurt, when it comes to like phrases like, oh, leader, or, chain of command or whatever. It's like, no, it's if it's developed right and you have the camaraderie and you've got the fellowship there and like you trust each other like brothers, then it doesn't come off like that. It's actually more fluid. It's like, man, thank you for taking the lead on that. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the relationship it should have. It's kind of like a, but you need it. You got to have it. But it's kind of like a family with a really good relationship, rather than like a tyrannical structure where it's like, you will do this,
Yeah.
And if you do have that, you need to weed that out, because that's not going to help either. And I don't want this to turn into like a leadership podcast. Honestly, I think that would be a great thing to cover in the future. But I think it's just really valuable. Like, this is the reason we're spending so much time on the team leader, is because it's going to directly affect your overall
chemistry and everything.
Yeah, and effectiveness. Yeah. Whoa. The old double effectiveness.
Duplicated effectiveness. But I mean, I just wanted to harp on the team leader, because that's like such an important role, and like,
well, it sets the tone for the rest of your team.
It sets the tone for the rest of your team, and your team leader is the next one up to become a squad leader as well.
Yeah.
So like, if you get big enough that you like actually adding on guys and stuff, like your team leader is going to be, and like in the Army, that's going to be the next spot that he's probably going to fall into, is going to be like a squad leader position. So it's like, how good you are as a team leader is going to directly dictate how good you are as a squad leader as well. Just more people that you're adding on, but that same leadership skills and squared awayness is still going to follow you to that next position. So that's why I just wanted to like stay on the team leader a little longer, because I think they have the most responsibility by far.
I agree. And so to finish my thought, all I was saying was, if you are someone that's kind of in that role, or you're trying to be, or whatever, or you have been and you're building a new team, it doesn't matter. If that's the role that you see yourself in and you're listening to this podcast, you should absolutely be consuming this information. You should listen to podcasts. You should read field manuals, read things like the Ranger Handbook. That stuff it's not very palatable, especially because a lot of it's out of context, but try to understand it. Ask questions. Go to people that have been in the military and be like, can you explain this to me? What's this mean when they say this? Research tactics. Understand the battle drills. Start to look up, do leadership,
like courses.
Yeah, leadership courses and leadership development. That's the word I was looking for. Literally stop looking at it like, when we go out and play with the bros, this is, it's kind of fun. I kind of like take the lead or whatever. No, literally look at this like, this is life and death, and it's not just your life, it's the life of the 3 guys that are with you, or however many guys it is. And this mirrors as well to the squad leader, for sure. Squad leader is
and
the
the Bravo
same thing.
Team leader.
Yeah, just team leaders in general. Any leadership position, get away from the mindset of self and go to the mindset of others. Like, your decision will directly affect the life of all of those around you, to your left and your right. And with that in mind, that's how you should go forward into your learning and your own personal development. It's a big picture, and it's important. And while we're developing this kind of modern Minuteman mentality, across our nation, which it's cool to see it. It's like catching on, and people are taking it pretty seriously. And there is some weird crap going on, but now's the time when we're still safe, relatively safe in our society. We're not in a situation like Ukraine where we're literally like thrust into the throes of warfare.
Yeah.
Like, we have the time to sit down and read and develop ourselves. And if you are trying to get into that team leader position, or you are in that situation, or if you're developing people around you.
Yeah, it builds. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, good leadership builds, or I guess plants the seed for other great leaders.
Yeah.
Because it gives them an example on how to be. So that next man up mentality, you're potentially making another great leader underneath you as well.
Yeah, your focus should not be, I'll say it this way: it's not enough to be a great shooter on the range. It's not enough to like really thoroughly understand land nav and how to shoot an azimuth. Like, those are just individual skills you must have.
Yeah.
You need to be able to manage people in a respectful way, in an efficient way, and make fast decisions that aren't dumb. I mean, you have to make fast decisions that aren't dumb. Something they used to say a lot while I was in is, if you're having a hard time making a decision, it's better to just make one and go with it than to not make one at all. And I agree to that to an extent. But being able to understand the situation you're in because you have researched things and you've built experience, maybe you don't physically have something like combat experience. Not a lot of people do. It's a rare experience to actually have. But you've done the training, you've intentionally worked to develop yourself and to build experience necessary so you can make, to the best of your ability, good decisions. And sometimes staying put and holding the line is the best decision, but you do need to make fast decisions that aren't dumb. Yeah. And that is not something you can just do. That's something that takes development. So I just wanted to rant on that for a second.
Yeah, that's good.
But
so moving right along, your automatic rifleman, we've kind of covered this a little bit now, just talking about the team leader and how important the automatic rifleman is.
Yeah.
That's going to be your second probably most experienced guy, if not first most experienced guy, if your team leader, if he's just not a great leader and he doesn't want to be in that leadership role, he's got to know what he's doing, because he's got the, for us, we ran saws for this position. We had saw gunners, 249. But they had, you have the most, at least when I served, it was the most combat effective weapon.
I think it still is.
For the entire, Afghan-Iraq conflict.
I'm pretty sure the 249 has more combat kills than any other platform.
Yeah.
For small arms.
So, just let that kind of sink in. So,
it is your teeth.
Yeah.
It's the team's teeth. It's really where your lethality comes from.
And it's incredibly dangerous. It just it's a game changer as far as from the fighting perspective.
Yeah. They can literally, I've seen it. I saw it so many times in Afghanistan. They're firefight enders. You get the belt feds online, rocking and rolling, and you can, if you're up against a small contingency, you'll end the firefight with that.
Yep. It also is great for the start of the firefight too, because that mad minute, that's where you get your fire superiority, is from having belt feds, and keeping people's heads down. Yep. So, because there's nothing scarier than, having bullets whizzing by and all you want to do is just not get hit. So you're like, man, I'm got to keep my head down. Well, meanwhile, while your head's down, you're getting flanked or whatever's happening to you. So, it's just a matter of time at that point. If you're pinned down. So you're pretty much screwed. Yeah. And then there's mortars, and that kind of completely changes it. But, but anyway, so I think that's an incredibly important role. I think I hated when I'd hear oh yeah, we just put the newest guy on the saw because it's a heavy and they got to carry lots of ammo, and it's
that's dumb.
Yeah, you're so dumb, because you have the most effective weapon platform in the least experienced person's hands. Yep. Unless you're really leaning on the fact that the team leader's going to run that guy, but it's dude, the team leader's got enough to do as it is, man. Have the saw or have your belt fed in the hands of someone who knows how to use it. Yeah.
Well, especially that, because a automatic rifleman is, it kind of says it in the name. It's not a machine gunner. A lot of people get confused with that. It's a platform that is solely utilized by that person. You don't have an assistant gunner, an AG, a spotter, or anything like that. It's you're running and gunning. That's your baby, and you're taking people down. So you need to have the ability to run that gun high effectiveness. You need to know how to deal with malfunctions, do ammo changes, do barrel changes, and all that, all on your own. You're doing that by yourself.
Yep.
And you need to understand how to effectively use that gun on targets. The only other time that you might see, so I'll put this in there for a little bit of understanding or just general education, but also for some of you possible military, ex-military, current, whatever listeners out there, when you get into gun teams, like my platoon used a lot of 240s. Like we had gun teams.
You're kind of support by fire element kind of types.
Yep. And that's 240s. So bigger, they're not, it's not a gun that you can really run on your own. You definitely can't carry the ammo for it. So you had your AG, who was also an ammo bearer. So that AG carried, or assistant gunner. They did your barrel swaps. They did your, they could help with set up your tripod and stuff like that. And they carried extra ammo for you. In that configuration, that AG is actually the more experienced person. And that's because they're spotting for you as well. So when they're laying beside you in the gun position, they're directing your fire, and they're kind of spotting for you, and they're telling you where to shoot, and they're telling you adjustments. If you're set up like on a tripod, they can help you with adjustments. But they're both very experienced. It's not like a brand new guy. Usually that guy that's now the gunner has been a rifleman for a while, and maybe even been a saw gunner. Yeah. We saw that a lot. So if you were in a standard, like dismounted, like even our platoon as heavy weapons, we would have, we rarely actually used saws because we were set up more for like support by fire kind of, configurations and stuff. But yeah, you would have a guy who was very competent on a belt-fed gun. Yeah. That was running that 240. And then his AG was someone who had ran the 240 for a long time.
Yeah, previously.
Yeah. So that's a little bit different, and that doesn't, I don't think there's a lot of application, unfortunately, there to
unless kind of the modern Minuteman. 240.
Yeah. But the automatic rifleman, I think, definitely has a role. It does. It just 100% does. Now, unfortunately, it's hard to get. Do you want to get into that a little bit as far as
we'll attack that a little later.
Okay, sorry.
We'll just keep kind of plugging through from
from that military perspective.
Yeah, big army perspective.
Anything else is like as a saw gunner? You were a saw gunner, so
yeah, you kind of nailed it on the head. I think just being super efficient with the platform itself is going to make or break that position. So know that weapon platform like the back of your hand, whether that's, from a Minuteman perspective, whether that's a saw or if that's like a, kind of like what you said, maybe you can't do it, but like your fight light platform or whatever, like Grantham kind of covered those. But we'll get into that a little bit more later. But know the platform that you're running, the insides and out. Know how to clear malfunctions. Know how to clear malfunctions and do reloads incredibly quick, because having that gun up and running is so important and can make or break like your fighting. Your stance in the, your superiority in the fight, I guess.
Yeah.
So I think that's. Obviously, everyone's a rifleman, so all these positions, they know how to do each other's jobs. I think that's important to know. Maybe not the rifleman, because usually that's like your newer guy, potentially. But even if he's got just as much experience as everyone else, then yeah, he probably should be able to do everything. Yeah. It just kind of depends on where he's at and his, like, how long he's been doing the thing, I guess. So getting into the grenadier. Your grenadier, it's kind of self-explanatory, but usually they got, an M4 with, when I first started, 203s connected to the bottom of it. They switched to the 320. And some people mounted them on their guns, which is ridiculous. And what made way more sense is guys who are running like thigh rigs mounted to their thighs. They can still get to it pretty quick, but it's basically like a sidearm at that point.
Yeah, which is kind of weird because in that role, it is your primary. So like your primary weapon in that role is the grenade launcher.
Yeah.
which is kind of weird. I know it might sound odd, but it's an important role. It's really good at managing distance, like maintaining, if you're getting closed on, it's really hard to close on somebody that's planting 40 millimeter grenades on your head.
Yep.
It's a challenging element to move on. And then you mix that with the belt fed gun, and it is hard to maneuver on somebody like that. You also have strategic options. So you have like smoke, you can do signaling.
Yep.
There's a lot of different things like that you can do that are beneficial and help the squad even beyond into platoon
Hit
as a
those
whole.
like parachute flare things that you could shoot out of them too.
Yep. And you could illuminate your enemy if you needed to. They're cool because they're targeted. So yeah, you could launch a flare that was like a white phosphorus that just burned. It was on a little parachute, and it slowly descended right over like an enemy position.
Yeah.
So
and you can just see people crawling around.
Yeah.
And all sorts of crazy stuff.
So it's very you can do some cool things with it. I was a grenadier for a long time. I think you were a grenadier as well.
Yeah,
probably.
I was only a grenadier for like, I don't know, maybe 6 months or something. It wasn't very long.
But I think it's something that, again, like we said, you usually start as a rifleman as a new guy, and you work your way through all the positions. That's kind of what happens.
That's how it should happen, at least. I mean, sometimes it doesn't, but
yeah,
you got to plug holes. If you don't have someone to fill that position, then sometimes you just throw a guy in there. But
yeah, but it's interesting. There's a lot of history there. I mean, they had the old like shoulder shot grenade launchers like from back in the like Vietnam era and stuff like that. There wasn't really there was a grenadier in World War II, but it was literally somebody that like hucked grenades like with their hands, which is crazy. But
yep,
just carrying so many grenades. But it changed, and then you started seeing I can't remember the name of that thing, but that shoulder shot or that.
Oh yeah,
that crazy thing with the wood stock that was a grenade launcher. The reason I bring that up is because it went to weapon like rifle mounted systems like the 203, but weirdly it's kind of come back around with like the 320, because the 320 is a very effective grenade launcher, like as a standalone system. It's very awkward in my experience mounted to a rifle.
Yeah, it's pretty stupid.
The 203 might be one of the best. I'm partial to the 203 because it just made a lot of sense. It was on your rifle, so then it's like, yeah, you have it, but you're never sacrificing the ability to still be a rifleman. You're a rifleman, but you're able to run that 203
and like run it super well. Like,
yeah,
like because I mean they're not the easiest thing to shoot.
No, they're not.
I mean, once you figure it out, they're not that bad. But dude, there's some guys that are just good with them.
Yeah, it's true. Like there's, for whatever reason, I got pretty good with it. But
sound like old Register was pretty good with it.
Register was a beast with he was a grenadier like pretty much his whole time in. And that kind of happens too. If you get like really good at something, then you just kind of stay there.
Yeah,
it's like dang,
why
dude,
change it up, man?
That guy can plant grenades. Like, I mean, I remember times that he'd use it in Afghanistan as like a forced de-escalation kind of thing, and he'd plant like smoke like right on like the windshield, like right in the windshield of cars and stuff. Like I can't remember if he told that story about that funeral or not, but
I think we have told that story.
Okay, yeah, but man, he literally was just planting those things right in the front windshield of those cars, dude. So many cars, just people trying to go to a funeral, and he was just just launching smoke grenades at them.
Yep.
Hey man, you gotta keep your distance. But that was hilarious. But yeah, he was super good. But yeah, it's an important position, and it's there's a lot of SOP building that can be done around that position alone, and that's where you see, even in the military, since we're sticking to that military kind of education right now, that's where you'll see quite a bit of variation even in the infantry units. Like,
yeah,
you talk to guys that were infantry and you start getting into the weeds, and it's like you start asking them what their grenadier did. It could be completely different from like what another infantry unit did.
And it can change even within the course that you were there. Like I remember when I first got to my unit, team leaders were actually the grenadiers. And it was crazy.
Whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah. But that's because back then they were running at least in the Alpha team, that's how they did it. Because back then, or was it the Bravo team? I can't even remember. But that was when every platoon had a designated marksman. So one of your riflemen was also the DM in that team, whichever team it was. I think it might have been the Bravo team. But so like I did that for a while. I was the designated marksman. I was a rifleman. But that's how they freed up a space on the 4-man team, was they had your team leader be a grenadier. Not saying I don't agree with that. I think that was just crazy. And then we got sniper teams, and that fixed all that. They pulled away the DMs and sorted that out. But yeah, it was kind of wild for a second there.
Yeah. When you start getting into the specialty stuff, it beyond like what's in a traditional team, like the team leader, automatic rifleman, grenadier rifleman, which is that traditional team. You start getting into DMs and stuff like that, and it changes. Like I was a DM for most of my career.
Yeah.
And like I ended as a DM. That's a designated marksman. So basically it's your you have guys, it wasn't uncommon to have guys in their platoon that their main role was counter sniper. So
yeah, like
it is to interdict and deal with enemy snipers. It's exactly what it sounds like, counter sniper, but
which would have sucked.
Yeah, which was weird because I was in the platoon. I was in the Bravo team as when we were moving. I was a rifleman in the platoon.
Yeah,
but I was a specialty role. So that's like one of those situations where I wasn't the least experienced person. I was actually probably minus the team leader at the time, I was the most experienced person. But
yeah,
it was a specialty position. And then whenever we got set up on a objective and I was in Overwatch, I'd leave that and I'd go with like our forward observer and many times the one of the radio guys, which the forward observer did radios, so he kind of became like a forward observer / RTO. But I would go up with him and then also the gun team usually.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's things you can do, and that's, I don't want it to sound like you have to get stuck into this this configuration either, and we'll break that down also later. But it's just, I think, more important to understand it. And then I think just like anything, once you understand the foundation and the basics, you can build on that and you can customize that. And also it gives you a good idea of what you could be up against, really, if you are facing a more conventional organization of some kind.
Yep.
So yeah.
And then your rifleman, or you get on grenadier?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I mean, obviously the grenadiers carrying grenades, 40 millimeter projectile grenades, and oddly enough, they don't usually carry frag grenades. So a lot of people would assume they would. At least in I'm curious what you guys did. In ours, it was actually the team leader that carried smokes and frags, and then we'd actually stick some frags with the old rifleman too.
Yeah, that's basically exactly how we'd do it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how we do it. It's pretty much team leader had all the demo handheld stuff.
And then weirdly enough, our gun teams, our 240 gun teams, which are kind of specialty, had grenades as well.
Yeah.
And that was so they could, if they had to bug out, then they could, get out of there with frags because they're take a little longer to move. So.
Yep.
Anyways.
So the rifleman, probably going to be your least experienced guy. Yep. Doesn't mean that he's not experienced.
Yeah.
Probably just a guy that, and I'm not saying like to downgrade that guy. Like if you're in a rifleman position, don't feel like you're just like the peon, because
yeah.
You should be able to do everyone's job. Like if you've been there long enough, you should like be like, yeah, I could pick up that saw and still freaking run and gun with that bad boy, or I could be a grenadier, or I could be a team leader.
Yep.
You're still an asset, and ultimately everyone's a rifleman. So
it is especially
be super effective as a rifleman. Just like I said with the saw gunner, just because you may not have the most dangerous platform out there, you can still be incredibly effective as a rifleman. So, Yeah. And then like that guy's probably going to have like some kind of other
support
roles
kind of stuff.
Yeah, like potentially some radio equipment or whatever,
Might be carrying extra water,
Yeah.
You're dealing with less weight.
Yeah.
Ideally, or
yeah,
usually,
you're not carrying 40 millimeter grenades on top of all your ammo. You're not carrying linked. We carried 1,000 rounds when we would go out. That's saw gunners. I've heard 800 rounds, but we carried 1,000. So
yeah.
So yeah, that's a lot of ammo to be hiking around with. So usually the saws didn't really get a bunch of extra material.
Yeah.
I would take it if we needed it carried. I didn't really care. Like I would just be like, yeah, sure, why not? My ruck's pretty empty, but my chest rig and my saw is pretty heavy. So, but anyways,
your rifleman could potentially carry more ammo for the saw too. I've seen that quite a bit.
Yeah, we didn't really do that much, just because it was like it's better to have it on you if you need it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then like as far as movement, obviously, if you're doing like a wedge or something like that, you keep your grenadier and rifleman on the same side. Mm-hmm. Your team leader's up front, kind of in the middle, and then your saw's going to be on one side on his own, because he's got the most effective, most dangerous platform, I guess, so he can kind of handle his own sector over there.
Yeah. And really, he's, the thought process there is that the rifleman and the grenadier are going to be, they're going to both have to be shooting a lot to even come close to what the automatic rifleman's able to do.
And then if you have a Bravo team, you're going to have that same setup just flip-flopped. So whatever side your saw's on the Alpha team, the opposite side the saw will be on, and then vice versa with the grenadier and stuff.
Yeah. So if you're moving, if you're moving forward and your saw on the Alpha team's on your left side, then in the Bravo team it'd be on your right side.
Yeah. Yep.
Then you have an automatic weapon on both sides of your formation
of your whole squad.
Yep.
So then, if you're talking squads now, we'll break down squads. The only addition is obviously you're gonna have that Bravo team, like what we talked about, all the same roles, but yeah, all the same roles. But your squad leader, obviously, you'll have a squad leader. That'll be another added measure of leadership that kind of runs both squads. Mm-hmm. So he kind of basically goes to the team leaders, and then the team leaders disperses the information down. But honestly, the squad leader takes care of everyone as well. Like I don't know, at least from my experience, squad leaders, it wasn't like, oh, you can't talk to your squad leader. Like, yeah, like the squad leader dealt with us directly. If you're just a team guy, like you weren't a team leader. And they're obviously going to be the most experienced. They were probably team leaders at one point. They were probably everything at one point, but they were team leaders probably more recently, and then they got bumped up to a squad leader and basically just a little bit more responsibility, or quite a bit more responsibility. We ran RTOs, and like an individual person that was assigned to the squad leader, and that guy was like, just like I said, was just really dialed in on radios in general, whether that's maintenance, making antennas, how to basically use terrain mapping or terrain, what am I trying to say? Masking. Yeah, how to use terrain masking and directional antennas and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Programming the radios, all the above. So, I thought that was a smart way to do it, because, like I said, the team leaders and squad leaders already have enough on their plate. If you have someone who can like help in that area, not saying like these guys don't know how to use the radio or even kind of work on it, their own equipment, but like this guy, like the backup help, like to like, hey, I can't figure out what's going on with my radio. I can't. Oh, let me see it. All right. Oh yeah, you just have to do this. Okay, thank you. Just have like a kind of a subject matter expert on that stuff.
For sure.
So I think that's important. And it usually worked really well. And honestly, I remember my squad leader leaned on, honestly, my RTO in my squad when I was the saw gunner, I think he was like one of the only dudes that had more experience than me. And he was a squared away dude. Like he was super solid on the radio crap. It's crazy how good he was. But And my platoon sergeant, or my squad leader, would just like, yeah, he's got it. Like he had 100% confidence in him. Like he just didn't even really worry about like trying to learn that stuff, because he's like, dude, some people just have the brain for that.
Yeah.
to really get that stuff dialed in. So, yeah. So that's basically your squad.
Yeah.
Super kind of short, but like, and like, it's super important to know, like, everyone. I don't want people to think like your team members that aren't team leaders and squad leaders are just kind of like, I'm just gonna do whatever I'm told.
This is literally what I was about to say.
You know what I mean? Like like that structure makes it seem that way, but everyone's gotta know what the heck to do, and like when you're under fire and all that stuff, like, or like if you're hitting a building, you need to know how to clear rooms and all. Like, you're not just dumb, like, oh, I'm just following the leader.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was thinking about this too, because we've had people reach out and be like, hey man, love your podcast. Like, our whole group sits down and listens to your podcast. Like, we all listen to it, and then we get together and go over it, and we implement things that we think make sense and stuff. So please keep doing it, which is awesome. Like, there's a couple out there that have said, like, yeah, our whole group, but I was just thinking about it now, like, like your whole group, hey, did you guys listen to the podcast? Yeah. All right, dude, so you're going to be a rifleman. So I was going to say,
it's not an insult.
It's not an insult. Yeah, it is just, which realistically, I mean, and we'll start to move into it.
Riflemen have benefits though. Like, it's
dude, like, it's the core.
If it didn't have a benefit, then everyone would just be cruising around with saws.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, there's benefit to having riflemen.
For sure.
They're faster. They're lighter usually.
Yep.
They like Leaders Recon, the amount of times that riflemen were pulled to go do the Leaders Recon with the team leader was like not even close. Because I would be pissed as a saw gunner if I got picked.
Yeah.
Like, dude, I've already been humping this freaking saw for miles, and you're about to make me go try to be sneaky through the woods with a gigantic platform?
Yeah.
It's not even that huge. Like, they're short, but they're just fat, dude. They get caught on stuff.
They're cumbersome.
Yeah, so it's like, there's benefit to having a rifleman, and like,
absolutely. It is not a downgrade. Like I said, I mean, I was one of the most experienced guys in my team, and I was in a rifleman position.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example of a
if you got a guy who's a crack shot, rifleman.
Yeah.
Like, why are we going to put him anywhere else?
Yep.
That you want that guy to be there. Now, a lot of this too, you might listen to and be like, how the heck does this apply? To
some of it doesn't
to a civilian setup. And, to be quite honest, it doesn't quite, you can't quite do it. I mean, do we just want to start breaking that down?
Yeah, man. I mean,
obviously the team, well, okay, let me back up just a second. So that rifleman position is going to be, you're basically starting there for this. So we're kind of going off the same thing we were just talking about. It's definitely not a downgrade, because realistically, when you're looking at what's available to our everyday citizen, everyone's going to be basically a rifleman.
Yep. And
that's why I think it's so important to maintain that rifleman mentality. And when I talk about this, and I've said this before, I think we've said this before, I'm going to say it again. A rifleman should be able to effectively engage targets all the way out to 500 meters.
Yeah.
Even with a 5.56 platform. And for whatever reason, in today's Instagram ran tactics, it is, I think people look at the rifleman and they're like, yeah, you run around and you shoot at targets that are 25 yards away or whatever. It's like, there's CQB tactics, mount, whatever you want to call it, and then there is rifleman tactics. A rifleman should be able to engage somebody point blank all the way up to 500 meters. Yeah. And emphasis on the distance. That is the whole point. And I'm frustrated at the amount of times I see it. There's the whole point of using a projectile a projectile launching weapon is to keep your enemy at distance.
Yeah.
Keeping them at distance allows you maneuverability. It allows you to evade their incoming fire. The lethality is lessened at distance. And if you have the advantage, you can actually neutralize threats at great distance. So as a rifleman, Now, applying to everybody in the team, everyone should be a very competent marksman.
Yeah.
Enough. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't be fast and accurate and have good manipulation, because that's all super important. And this is where, for some reason, people get so black and white here. The common training that you see is people running around, shooting at, oh, I'm going to sprint over here and then I'm going to run over here, reload. And we do that kind of stuff all the time too. But it's rare to see people laying down in the prone, shooting at 300 yards, shooting at 500 meters or 500 yards or whatever.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff needs to be practiced regularly, because it's not easy to do.
No.
It's definitely not easy to do fast. Everyone can lay there and kind of plink around. You should be able to hit the prone, boom, and engage at 300 meters and just make hits.
Yep.
It just immediately, like reaction, boom, lay down, boom, 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 boom. Okay, effective hits, moving on. Like it should just be part of what you can do. That's cool that you're super fast. You have a fast split time, at this target that's 50 yards away. Like, yeah, my split between shots, I'm all A-zone. That's sick. Like, I'm not saying don't do that. But if that's all you're doing, then you need to test yourself and run and stretch the legs on that platform, because a rifleman is not standing up on his 2 feet, running around, shooting close-range targets. He should be able to do that 100%.
Yeah.
But you need to be able to engage at distance. If someone's that close to you, you're either gridlocked in a city, or you're cruising around through a tight neighborhood, or something's gone really bad, and a lot of people have died. A lot of your buddies have died, and you're like Ramboing around now, just hoping that it works. And you hear stories about that, about guys that their whole platoon got killed, and there's like, yeah, and me and this guy, there's a story that I'm literally thinking about, and it was like, it was probably SEALs, because no offense to the SEALs, but man, they just always find themselves in like the craziest, like, yeah, and we had nobody and we were dead. And, it's like, what are you guys doing? Anyways.
Yeah.
Oh, man. At least they're highly trained and super hardcore. But yeah, I mean, and it's like, yeah, and thankfully, and we were just running. We were just running and just shooting everybody that got in our way. And like, it's like, dude, you guys were literally like winging it.
Just John Wayne it.
Yeah,
hard,
just
dude.
ripping. And that's...
Just riding on a horse with a lever action in one hand and a hand in the other.
You need to be able to do that, dude. You need to be able to, and that's an important skill to practice. But I'm still seeing platforms that are built with the sole intention of going room to room. Short, RDS, red dot sight, collapsed super tight, boom. That's riflemen. Like, we need to return to riflemen. I actually wrote a article on this. It's on our blog, but it's pretty simple. But we need to return to that focus of like maneuvering and keeping our threats at distance and being able to effectively engage and destroy our enemy at great distance.
Yeah, because I mean, if you don't have a belt fed, which most people aren't, you're not going to be able to get that fire superiority. But what you can get is you can get, actually kill people, like actually smoke them.
Yeah.
Like make good shots, good fast shots. And if everyone's dead, then you don't need fire superiority. So. Yeah. Like. Yeah. That's your only option. You have to be a good shot.
Yep. And that's small unit tactic 101. It's been that way for a long time. Like you look at small, Navy teams or like Marine recon guys and stuff like that. You look at how they're configured, and if they're running small recon style, like size elements, they don't often have like a belt fed in that setup. They'll have something that's like where the Mark 12 came from. The whole Mark 12 is precision platforms set up for range, precision shooting, suppressed, hard to identify. Which equipment wise, that's an area we need to be paying attention as the modern Minuteman and as a citizen fighting force. Suppressed weapons. Suppressors are available. They're way more available than they've ever been. They're easier to get. There's a lot more information on how to do it. If you're in this stuff, you probably know somebody. If you don't have one already, you probably know someone that's bought one.
Yeah.
So suppressors should be considered. Hiding your flash, reducing your signature, benefits across the board. There's no con to having a suppressor. Length and weight, I guess, would be your con. Very worth it. Not a big deal. Additionally, looking back at the Mark 12, adequate magnification, being able to identify things at great range and make accurate shots at great range is very important. Accurized platforms, heavier, longer barrel, or even nowadays, not even necessarily longer. You're seeing a lot of platforms, like, for example, there's a lot of 16-inch platforms that are incredible. You're getting good length out of those and great accuracy, sub-MOA groupings out of a AR kind of style platform. So that's the direction that we need to be looking as a whole, and we've been asked before, well, would you want to have a guy that has like a more CQB? This is where it's going to depend on your environment. If you live in a city, then dress accordingly,
Yeah.
But we've talked about this before. I don't see a big need of any kind of super short platform. I mean, our standard carbines in the military were 14.5 inches. We had a 14.5 inch barrel of the M4.
Yep.
And I never felt like it was too long.
No.
I can't remember a time that I was like, man, I wish I had a 10-inch platform. Like, never. We went in and out of buildings. We were going in like kicking in little weird culotte doors and going in these tight little mud structures in Afghanistan. No problem. I never was like. I even went through a few with my M1A, my EBR, my M14. That's a 21-inch gun.
Yeah.
Barrel, 21-inch barrel. Well, the gun's way longer. I collapsed that stock, tucked it up on my shoulder, and cruised through. It was doable. Marines have done it forever with M16s.
Yeah.
No problem at all. Yep. Pop it up over your shoulder. Get after it. Learn how to do it. The benefits of having a longer platform far outweigh the benefits of having a short one. That's the other thing is I don't know. I mean, we'll get into this later on. The strategy of going door to door is kind of a weird one when you start looking at that prepared citizen.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be real for a second. Why are we kicking doors in? There's only a few reasons you should be doing that. If you got to save a life, if you're in let's say the environment is just completely degraded and you're dealing with people that are literally like raping and pillaging and that's happening and you're like, I'm shutting that down, that might be a reason. Or like you have to take the structure, like this is an enemy stronghold, you're going to go in. Like there's times you have to do it, and I'm not saying don't be able to. Like 100% you need to understand CQB and how to enter and clear a building.
Yeah, and even if you're going into a, as far as empty building, you're going to still go into it the same way you would if it was
100%,
filled with enemy.
And again, if you're in an urban metropolis area, then you need to understand those skills thoroughly. But if you're configuring your entire setup for that mission, I think that's a mistake.
You are bottlenecking your capabilities by a lot.
Yeah, raids and stuff like that even smaller raids that were done overseas, like from my experience, and then you start looking at big raids like when they went and got Osama bin Laden and stuff like that. Those were big elements doing that. 60 plus dudes, tons of air support, overhead imaging. They literally trained on that mock house. Like we used the Osama bin Laden for a year. They hit that mock structure. They're not just kicking doors and rocking and rolling.
Yeah.
Now you look at Fallujah. Were they doing that, going door to door? Yeah, but we lost a lot of guys.
Yep.
And they were, they weren't fighting some super advanced military. It was a bunch of, Al Qaeda and also like just a bunch of pissed off Iraqis and stuff. And I'm not saying that to downgrade the Marines and the Army dudes that were over there. Not at all. I would never do that. It's to make the point that it is hard to do. This is like that close range combat is where things get nasty fast.
Yep.
So maintaining an ability and having the skills necessary to be an adequate rifleman, it should be your absolute foundation. That's where we start to build from. Everyone needs that. So there's no excuse to. Everyone gets into this stuff pretty much from being in loving going to the range and stuff and building guns and this is sick and I just bought this and if you're building an AR platform and your primary goal is like, CQB, I don't think it's your fault. I just think that the Instagram community / gun industry you've been misled slightly. And again, it's not black and white. I'm not trying to say you shouldn't ever have that
18-inch rifle.
Yeah. It's not that. It's that, especially with the 5.56 and 308. Honestly, any of these, if you've got a longer barrel, you're going to have more velocity. Now, obviously, there's a point of depreciation where that's not true anymore. You can have too long of a barrel, but
Yeah, I mean, we've said it 1,000 times. That 14.5 to 16-inch barrel is a sweet spot for kind of doing.
Don't need to go shorter. If you want to be super high end, super fancy and do like a 13.9 pin and welded, so you have like your perfect 16 inches, that's cool. But I really do not see a reason to go below 12.5 ever anymore. 12. I probably wouldn't go below that 13.9. That would be the absolute minimum. I think I would do. Realistically, I can't think of any even super tight CQB. I mean, if you're like clearing attic spaces and crawl spaces, dude, then you're some kind of crazy SWAT guy or something. Then have an MP7 or whatever. But realistically, from an infantry point of view, like a modern Minuteman, like what this mission is, being prepared to protect your community, dude, the modern musket, man. Have something that you can stretch out. Like distance is
multi-purpose rifle. Man.
Yeah, the MPR. Go back and listen to our multi-purpose rifle episode. I don't want this to become that. I'm ranting too long about it. Sorry, Steven, but it's just
I'm not gonna forgive you for this.
It is just I've seen it too many times, and it needs to. And if you've got these platforms and you're listening to this and you're like, man, I feel seen. Well, I see you, and it's time to take a look. Now, if you live in, again, just to cover down on this one last time, if you do live in an area where like you're like downtown New York or something, I don't know. I don't know. But you're somewhere where like everything's super close. I see. Even then, it's like cities are complicated, and cities are just death traps, man. Holy crap. So many windows, and you still got to be able to make long shots in cities. I don't know. It's that's the thing is we need to start looking at this from the reality of like, what are rifles made to do? They're made to increase distance between you and your enemy. Like that's the whole point. That's why we went.
And that's what other militaries are going to use it against you with too.
Yep.
If that's what it ever comes to, which hopefully it never does, but if that's what it ends up coming to. Military units train for this exact stuff. That's why, the U.S. military isn't the only ones that do it this way. Like pretty much every military does it this way, with slightly different tactics and stuff. But for the most part,
when you were a private and you were asked specifications about your platform, what was one of the most common questions that got asked? Was it what is the closest effective range of your rifle?
Probably, or it was
the max effective. You were asked what is the max effective range?
Yeah. Sorry, max effective. I also felt like it was going to be like the what is it the feet per second.
Yeah, it was stuff like that though. It was all about like that was probably the first one that got asked. Barlow, what's the max effective range of the 249? Barlow, what's the max effective range of the M4 carbine? Yeah. They wanted to know. They drove that home. Like, what is the farthest distance this platform will make effective hits? And that's something you knew, and you rattled it off.
Yep.
You need to know for yourself, and it's different for every platform. It's not as cut and dry. It kind of is in the military because you get issued platforms.
Yeah.
But you should know I know for a fact I can make effective hits at this range with this gun.
Yeah.
That's something you need to go figure out. Go out, take notes, figure out like, dude, 8 shots out of 10, I'm hitting that target. That's effective. 3 shots out of 10, I can make that hit. That's not as effective, but you know that you can make hits at that range. These are things you need to go figure out for yourself as a rifleman. And that is the foundation for the team. So Moving on beyond that, we'll get away from riflemen. Everyone should have that, though, is what I'm saying. And
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to start. Obviously, we'll just jump right to the team leader. We've already basically covered what the team leader needs. The team leader is one of the few positions where it's going to pretty much directly translate.
Yep.
Because it's someone that needs to have leadership skills. It's someone that needs to understand how to navigate and maneuver. And it's someone that can make decisions with the whole well-being of the team in mind.
Yep.
Jump up to the squad leader. Pretty much the same thing, just bigger picture. So this is where if you've got a group of guys and you're working on stuff, this is where having, if you've got ex-military dudes that have already done that, which there's a lot of veterans out there, and they're legit and they're serious about it and they're taking it, and they're passionate about it and they have good leadership qualities or they're developing leadership qualities. Get them in there,
Yep.
If they don't, then specialize those guys, because I know there's a big movement on you don't have to be military, you don't have to be law enforcement, and you shouldn't go get training from military guys and all this stuff that's out there. I mean, that's kind of been a thing now for a while. There's this.
It's changing finally, but
I think it's kind of shifting back. But I mean, Steven and I are biased. We're both ex-military dudes, but I'll just put it to you this way: we've done weird crap. We've done more weird, random stuff just simply going out and doing the training than you could ever get on your own, and that's experience. And experience is important.
Yeah, I mean, when you're doing it from a professional level, you're literally getting paid. That's your livelihood to go out and do it.
Yeah,
it's not it's not like time you've set aside outside of your life to go out and train. So it's difficult for the average citizen to get, unless they're just they have real estate or something and they manage properties and they just basically are stay at home all the time. They just kind of money makes money basically. Unless you've gotten to that point, you just don't have much time on your hands to go out and just do whatever the heck you want to do.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we experience that now, and we even run a firearms business, and it's we can't just go out and train all the time because we're busy. We got to keep our business afloat. So
yeah, we get asked all the time, you guys must shoot all the time. It's no, we shoot less than I think we ever have, probably. As far as just a range day, where you just go and just get to shoot, it's hardly ever. It's hard to make time for that. So, if you have guys that already have hours, lots and lots and lots of hours doing this stuff, utilize them. Sit down with them, figure out where it's going to work.
Yep.
If, maybe some restructuring. Now, again, they don't have to be in charge. I'm not saying that.
But just lean on them. Why not use it?
Yeah. Take advantage of the guy. And if you're one of those guys, be an open book. Dust off some of that stuff.
Yeah, because I mean that's all it takes. I was away from it for a long time, until we kind of started the business and started getting back into it. And you do forget stuff
this podcast alone has awoken so much random stuff. Just preparing for
just
some of these topics.
Yeah,
the amount of laughing that Steve and I do. Oh yeah, dude, this. Oh no, it's just funny to just dust that stuff off, and then we've done some, different refreshers out of the Ranger Handbook. And I mean, you read the Ranger Handbook so much when you're in that you me just saying that, I almost scoffed at myself. I'm the freaking Ranger Handbook, seriously?
Yeah.
But it's because you lived and breathed that stuff while you're in. So it just feels so weird to brush that off and read through it again. But then you start realizing man, we did all this stuff. And I'm not sitting here trying to be we're sick. That's not at all the point I'm trying to make. It's actually, it's more than that. It's basically saying if you are a guy with experience, share it. Be an open book. Don't be a gatekeeper. If you got guys around you, also, dude, big picture, just even if it's a little bit selfish sounding, I mean, if you're in a community and stuff gets bad, it might, I mean, every day that goes by, it's there's weird, stuff flying around in our sky. There's, China's getting freaking weird. You got Ukraine and Russia it's just getting more volatile, and you've got power stations getting shut down, and now trains derailing, and chemicals just pluming into the
school shootings
thing.
Still happening.
School shootings are just kind of another thing now. It's just Oh yeah,
Yep.
oh, like, and I even catch myself being like that. I'm like, oh, there's another one. Oh man, that's ridiculous that we've gotten to that point. Things are not looking good, and I don't want this to be a doom and gloom podcast, but it's like if you're a military dude and you used to do this stuff, and now you've got a family, you're trying to do your thing, you should be craving to go out and find guys, like, and you don't have to find other military guys. Like, yeah, they might make it a little easier, but honestly, you need to be finding guys with good character, guys you can trust, and that might be somebody that has never done anything like this before, but if they want to learn, they're going to learn it, and they will learn it from you, and you be willing to teach it. And don't be too prideful about it either. Like, if they're learning some stuff from other sources, make sure that fits and vet it, and all the things you got to do. But and then if you're a civilian guy, don't be so turned off to ex-military guys because so and so on the internet said that they are whatever. Like, you should be seeking each other out. And this goes beyond the whole military civilian thing. This starts getting into like the nitty gritty of like, oh, this guy's a nurse for a job. Yeah, come here, bud. This guy's a firefighter. He's sick. This guy does works with cell phones. Like, everyone has a job, and even guys that like work construction, it's like, I've just worked construction my whole life. Dude, that guy's going to have skills that you don't have. That guy's going to have perspective that you don't have.
He's going to be a hard worker probably,
that guy is going to know how to put in hours and keep his mouth shut and get things done. And he's going to be a problem solver. He's going to be someone that can look at a situation and be like, yeah, let's just do this. Like, I've had that happen so many times where I'm like trying to figure something out, and then some random dude's like, why don't you just do it this way? And I'm like, well, that's how we're doing it. It's like, wow, I didn't think of that. And then going beyond that, it's like guys like that, if you got to rebuild a community, dude, it's time for you to teach us all how to do this. Yeah. That guy's going to be stoked. All right, let's lay out these studs. I'll teach you how to frame a wall, or whatever. It's like don't feel like you're doing something that doesn't apply. Everything applies. It's the community perspective.
Yep. Yeah, you can make anything apply. And then you kind of touched it, but like, dude, quality over quantity, man.
Yeah.
You were just talking about it. It's like, yeah, you and I'm not talking about quality as in like backgrounds. I'm talking about like individual character, like integrity, morality, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
People you can trust, people that, for one, like, you got to have good chemistry as well. So you can't have like, it sucks, but you can't just have a bunch of different crazy, like, I'm not saying in the military you had a bunch of different crazy personalities and it somehow worked.
Yeah.
Sometimes it didn't though. There's people that, just didn't jive well. And they
usually got weeded out.
Yeah. And that can hurt you as, especially from the Minuteman perspective. So, yeah, we went over your minimum numbers, like 4 for a team and, 9 or 10 for a squad. Don't force numbers just to get to those numbers.
Yeah.
Quality over quantity, 100%. Like we always say that. And I think it's super important, especially from the man perspective, because you need to have good people amongst you. Otherwise it's just not going to work. And then that kind of brings up something that I kind of wanted to bring up really quick, and something that, go ahead.
I was going to say before we get into that, did we want to really quick give some examples? Because I talked about riflemen a ton, but do we want to give some examples of how you can supplement like the automatic rifleman and then maybe even a grenadier kind of position from a civilian perspective?
Yeah,
because I think we forgot to mention that. So there's a couple different perspectives on how you can do it. And the format I've seen a lot, and it's not new. It kind of goes back to the Naval Special Warfare Center's structure for like small recon teams. But you have a team leader who's just a rifleman. They have a rifle.
Yeah.
Equipment-wise, this is important too. Usually a rifle with magnification capabilities, something where they can see better. They have better observation of the battlefield as a whole.
Yeah.
Might even have like binoculars or something on them so they can identify things easier. And then for your automatic rifleman, obviously we're not going to have a belt fed. There are some options. There's the fight light upper receivers that just go on a lower. that, can be configured to be, they're belt fed. They can be fully automatic and all that stuff. Like if you have a fully automatic lower, it's going to work, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, if you
Fires
have
from the close bolt, right?
I was about to say, if you have an FFL Type 7 with an SOT, then technically you can manufacture fully automatic weapons. So
yeah,
so there's nothing actually illegal about that.
Yeah. But I mean, also if things get that bad, yeah. I mean, if things are that bad, I don't think the ATF is going to be your
no, yeah, I don't think so
concern.
either.
So you
just have to have the capability to make it that way prior to that.
Yeah, you could allegedly have that third pinhole identified and the parts necessary to make the plunge, but you could buy the Fight Light belt fed upper receiver. Just it runs from the closed bolt, so it'll run on a completely legal semi-automatic platform. So you could run it that way for the time being. And if things ever get a little froggy, then allegedly you could drill, pin, and rock and roll. So
and then the same thing with the FN 249. You can get those too. You can get a closed bolt one, and then like I was saying, if you are a Type 7 FFL with the SOT, you can even get conversions to make them run on an open bolt, full auto. So just like how you would have it in the military.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of hard to find the conversions, and it's not cheap to do, but I mean, it's an option. I just putting it out there. So then you would be like the exact same.
Yeah.
As
another option is you can just set up you can literally build an AR platform, like configure one that is just able to sustain higher rates of fire. So semi-automatic still, but
thicker barrel,
heavier barrel, carrying a lot more ammo. So you could maybe have like some of those Surefire 60-round mags or the Magpul 60-round drum mags. Those are actually pretty reliable. We've had pretty good luck with those. I think that might be a pretty good option where you have to reload less and you can just send a lot of fast semi-automatic fire. It actually has great effect.
Yeah.
It's better than just not. And then so that would be something you could do. And then I've seen a lot of ideas thrown around there of replacing that with a more of a old school battle rifle position.
Yeah.
So kind of getting back into your BAR type stuff. The BAR was fully automatic, but that old school kind of like mid 1900s era into late 1900s where you had a battle rifle where it's a heavier caliber. You could do that. The thing I don't
back
like
the M1 Grand. No, just
dude. But yeah, you could have you could do like a Scar heavy.
Yeah.
Or like a,
AR-10.
Just HK91, like a champion. AR-10, my biggest concern with that is you're going to now have less ammo, probably. So it's harder to carry more ammo of a bigger caliber.
Yeah, and it's not interchangeable amongst your teams.
But it's a possibility.
Or amongst your team members, I guess.
And in that Grenadier role, you have a guy who may go back to more of a handheld kind of munitions role. Like, you can get smoke grenades and stuff like that. Obviously, it's harder to get frags. You can't get like actual frags, but
you can get 203s and 320s as well.
You can, and you can actually get them pretty easily. So that's something to consider. I don't know if it's. I would say put your money and your investment towards an option for that automatic rifleman before you spend money and stuff on a Grenadier setup.
Yeah.
Because another option is to run that Grenadier as like a special purpose rifle. So more of a precision system where you have a guy who's able to make like very precise shots while you have the rifleman doing more of a support support fire kind of role where they're doing a lot of plunging fire. They're doing a lot of like higher rates of fire. And then that Grenadier / rifleman role is now more of a DM, a designated marksman.
Yeah.
So they're making accurate hits, in between like the suppressing fire from the riflemen on their team.
Yep.
So there's, you got to get a little more creative, but I just wanted to cover down on some of those options. But bottom line, I mean, the reality is you should be very competent marksman and rifleman to begin with, and then you can kind of specialize from there.
I would agree.
All right, so now you want to start getting into that?
Yeah, so, we cover all this. I kind of fill it back in, kind of so you know where I was going with it, but like, quality over quantity. Maybe you got like, it's you and another guy, and it's like, man, I've tried to find more guys, but there's just no way I'm going to be able to find 2 more guys. Like I might have a third, but I just can't, like, I don't know if I'm still kind of vetting him or whatever, there's other options for you. You look at sniper teams, man, and I know this is going to get super like, super just try hard in a way, but, I'm actually being dead serious though. Sniper teams, at least when we used them too, is usually a 2-man team.
Yep.
You usually had your rifleman, who is, your sniper. I mean, they're both snipers, and then you have your spotter who goes along with them. He's helping make, adjustments and things like that for the actual shooter. And, yeah, that's a super effective. I mean, it's very limited on your capabilities because you're definitely not hitting buildings. You're definitely not doing any you're trying to stay as far away as possible.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only way you're going to stay effective is by being really good at long distance. I mean, obviously, if you get compromised or something like that, you have to know how to evade, but more than likely, you're not going to try to do a squad attack or anything. You're gonna just try to bound and get out of there.
Yeah.
So that is something you can work on and just become super effective at long range stuff. And there's a place for it, because if things were to happen, like let's say China decides to come over here and attack us on our own soil, just because you don't have a group that you're training with doesn't mean there's not a group somewhere near you that could utilize those skills.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying just partner up with anyone, because obviously you want people that have the right intentions that you're kind of working alongside with. But
yeah,
I mean, it's going to get very, I think it's definitely an option. I think like you're not you're not just screwed from this mindset. Like, oh man, I love the Minutemen idea, but I just, I don't have anyone, or, that is always an option. And I think, and it applies, like if you were to get more people, those skills aren't wasted skills. Like that still applies to, your 4-man teams and stuff like that. That can still be utilized. And I think you should work on that, even if you have a team size element or a squad size element or even a platoon size element. Yeah, I mean, I think the long distance, like you said, keeping your enemy as far away as possible is incredibly important. So
a good sniper team can absolutely wreak havoc too on a conventional force.
Yeah.
Like literally you can, there's so much historical precedence for it. You can completely mitigate and stop movement overall. Just as a simple 2-man team, you just got to be really good at staying hidden. In today's world, you need to thoroughly understand how to defeat thermal imaging.
Yeah.
And there's a lot there, but I think just the benefits of reconnaissance and intelligence gathering alone as a 2-man element are insane.
Understand hide sites, understand how not to be detected. Obviously, that's thermal imaging and just everything in general.
Yeah. Because that's what a sniper team does. A lot of people think they go and like neutralize targets. That's actually not really the case. They can, and they have. But usually from a military perspective, it's easier to target somebody with a missile and kill them than it is to like send in a team and snipe them. They're really in there to do reconnaissance, like long range reconnaissance, and be somewhere for a long period of time with very little resources. They don't take up a lot of they don't need a lot of stuff to keep them in the field. They're very resilient and able to adapt quickly. These are all things you can develop.
Yeah.
And there's 2 of them. There's just 2. You're just relying on each other, and you can move like very discreetly.
Yeah, another skill, and moving discreetly is where I'm going. Another skill that you have to really focus on is and like anyone that's gone to sniper school, I never went to sniper school, but anyone that goes to sniper school, at least Army snipers, the hardest part of that course is the stocks.
Yeah.
Which is basically you have to move in on a certain objective, and basically meanwhile while you're trying to move into this position, and then you have to, like, they're going to be looking for you, so you're trying to move into a position while they're looking for you, and they kind of know generally the direction you're coming from and everything, so they have to look for you, and then they try to basically spot you. They have like a certain amount of attempts, like, I think he's right there, like, I see a little bit of tree cancer right there, so I think he's right there, go over there. So they have one instructor that's close by that like walks over, and right here, it's like, if they land on you, you fail, like, you're done. And pretty much everyone that's gone to sniper school that I know of says that's the hardest part of sniper school, is that portion. But that's such an important skill to have, is to be able to, move without being detected.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult, like very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Because if you have someone, like, if you're fighting against someone who knows what to look for, especially like your anti-sniper, or your you used it earlier,
counter sniper.
Yeah, your counter sniper guys who are trying to, like, look for signs of snipers. Yep. Like, they're gonna know what doesn't look like, what looks out of place.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not easy, and that's why I say it's super limited on your skill, like what you can do. Mm-hmm. But it's still something. So
yeah, that's why I think that emphasis on intelligence gathering and observation, I think, are incredibly smart ways to train. I think that's what you start working on. Going hunting together, man, good training there. Good real world, real reward training. You get meat out of it for the family, and I think that's kind of a separate topic altogether. But I think, like, hunting as a unit is something that can be really utilized to great success.
And that's actually something I kind of want to cover, was how to build fluidity and camaraderie within, like, a group that you're training with.
Yeah.
Because ultimately you can be super squared away with, like, what your jobs, like what all your jobs are. But if you don't have, like, that, man, I'll die for you because you're my brother mentality, then you're not going to be a good fighting force. So you need to have the camaraderie, and then also you need to have, like, the chemistry with each other in order to be fluid and kind of know, oh, man, I know what he's going to do in this situation because we've rehearsed it or whatever,
Yeah.
We've done it enough to know, like, or like even from as basic as, like, you're chilling in night vision, you can tell who someone is just by the way they walk.
Yeah.
It's like, I know who that is, just because I've done so much with this guy. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, going hunting would be a great example of something that, you're getting out with each other, whether it's one-on-one or a few of you guys. And it's real world. It's actually putting stuff to use, and you're getting meat for your families.
Yeah. So
it's an all-around win. Another thing is obviously train. And that's training anything from, like, that could be anything from just, like, classroom stuff, like just meeting at each other's houses and be like, hey, we're going to just talk about this, to actually going out in the field and doing, like, actual, like, field training exercises, like actually going out and putting it all to work, and try to make that as real as you possibly can. Like, have security throughout the night, do it how you would do it. And whether it's raining, snowing, could be the nicest day out. You could live in a beautiful place that it never rains and it's just sunny all the time. And good for you, because that's the environment you live in. But like, train in all different types of environments that you're in, and going through the suck together builds like so much trust and just love for each other. It's kind of crazy, man. I just can't explain that. Like, that's something you don't know until you know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, it just builds bonds that are unbreakable.
And that needs to be pushed beyond convenience. Like, like we'll go out on little rucks and stuff, and before the work day and things like that. And I see a lot of that and those are fun. I see a lot of that on the old interwebs too. Like, yeah, look, we ruck every week or something together. It's like, yeah, that stuff's good. You should be doing that stuff, but you need to include some situations where it's like you go beyond that convenience, where it's like, we'll do it for this long because we got to get to work. You gotta deal with that stuff, obviously, but you need to factor in some situations where it's like, no, we're gonna go out for 3 days this summer or whatever. Like, you'll have to schedule it and plan it ahead, budget your time. But like, we're gonna go out for this long, just because, and we're gonna do it with like limited food and stuff like that, just to see how everyone does.
Yeah.
And if the weather shows up and it's like, oh man, it's going to be raining and it's going to be nasty the entire time, well, we got it scheduled. We're going,
Yeah.
You shouldn't be changing stuff around the weather. Yeah, it's going to suck and it's not going to be as fun.
But you're going to be able to try out your gear, man. You're going to be able to try out your rain gear.
And you're going to build such a level of
respect for one another.
Yep.
And then you're also going to find weaknesses. You're going to be able to figure out, either that's through your gear or through your teammates. Like, hey, man, like, dude, we should probably work on fire building because I noticed it kind of kicked your butt,
Yeah.
And like, obviously from like a military standpoint, you're probably not going to be building much fires, but like from like survival type stuff, it's important to know that kind of stuff. So
yeah.
Another thing to kind of build off of that is physical fitness. You brought up the ruck marches, doing rucks, going to the gym together, even from just keeping each other accountable, like through text or group chat or whatever. Making sure everyone stays physically fit. I mean, I think doing it together helps. I think it helps build the bonds. I think rucks are awesome. Going on runs together would be great. Pretty much anything you can do together to like, that has like a little bit of difficulty and can kind of like help, like, because you're there to motivate each other at that point. And that builds that camaraderie as well, to be like, hey man, you got this, let's do it. It's just a couple more miles, or whatever.
Yeah. It's the accountability too. It's like, if you have guys that aren't as fit as other guys, having people with the experience, with that fitness experience, to be like, dude, you've got work to do. Like, let's go. I'll help you. I'll be there with you.
Yeah.
Or like, hey, you're always focusing on this because you're really good at it. It's time to work on them legs, or what, whatever it is.
Yeah. Skipping leg day, dude.
And who better to do that than the guys you're ultimately trying to trust in like the worst situation possible.
Yeah. And then, like, dude, yeah, they're capable. Like, like if I get shot and I can't move or whatever, I gotta get carried out.
Yeah.
You best believe I hope everyone can carry me out on the team.
Yeah.
In the same way it goes, I want to be able to carry everyone out that I train with as well. So it's like, it's not about who's heavier. It's about like, yeah, this is my dude. I'm carrying him out.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter how heavy he is.
Yep.
So physical fitness is incredibly important. Fellowship.
Yeah.
And that's, obviously all this stuff is fellowship in a way, but having fellowship outside of this, stuff that we like to do. And honestly, all this stuff is kind of like, I'm not going to lie, it's kind of a blueprint of what we do, because I think it works really, really well. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but it does work really well, and it helps. Mm-hmm. It helps build it. So, if you guys are, if you're Christians, devotions, things like that, doing Bible study with each other is fantastic. Mm-hmm. Doing dinners together, whether that's just the dudes or doing your whole family's wives, kids, just getting it all together, just having a big old just feast together.
It's one of the best ways, I think. It's almost like an instinctual way to come together as a community, is over food.
Yep.
It's something that
been happening since humans existed.
Yeah. Even like, biblically, like you have the Last Supper and stuff like that. Like they came together before something terrible to break bread, and it's there's something special about that, and I've always really valued like being able to sit down and like have conversation and like laugh and
it's outside of that environment. So it's outside of like, it's pulling yourself away from, hey, we're going to go out and train and have fun doing this. You're learning more about like hobbies that people have outside of that realm. Yeah. And like you're just building a better understanding of each other. It's like growing friendships, you know? Yep. And some of the people that you train with, you may have known since you guys were kids, you know? You could be, let's say you know everything about them, which that's easy because you've probably been doing all the fellowship stuff your entire lives with them. Mm-hmm. Coffee's another thing, man. Going to get coffee in the morning or breakfast. We do that a lot too because it's a good way to start the day. We do them a lot before podcasts, even like if we're having guests on, sometimes we'll do coffee prior the morning of, you know, and but even within our group, like meet with each other individually or bigger groups, you know, one-on-one. Hey, I haven't met with this guy ever before. I think I'm going to go get coffee with him because I don't know him as well, you know, like he got brought in by some other member and I don't really know him that well. So I want to try to create a relationship. So let's go get coffee or, you know, or whatever, you know, it could be something as simple as if you like golf and go out to the drive range. I mean, I don't know, like it's like random, you know, you can do whatever the heck you want. Yeah. Just spend time with each other. So I think fellowship is one of those things that kind of helps you see behind the curtain, I guess, of like your individual people. Yeah. A little bit. Yep. So it's not just like, I don't know. It's like builds a relationship, I guess. I don't know. That's the best way I can explain that.
Yeah. Because, I mean, you don't want to have just like this. There's definitely a difference between like a relationship with a group than a relationship with individuals in that group. Yeah. And if you have good individual relationships within the group, that group relationship will be better. And even from looking at it kind of from a leadership perspective, understanding everyone's personalities really well will help you make decisions for the whole group. Yeah. And it's going to keep you from putting someone in a position that is going to make them really uncomfortable or may be that they may be ineffective in. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's really beneficial, and even just if you're not in a leadership position, you know, you're just one of the guys. It's like, what better way to really understand that?
Yeah, there's gonna be, I guess, two more things I want to hit on this vein, but intentional meetings. That's something that I think is definitely super important. And that's not like, I'm not talking, you know, everything's kind of an intentional meeting when it comes to like training, but I'm talking about intentional meetings, like just going over, hey, like let's discuss this. And I feel like you would do better at this because you kind of head up a lot of our intentional meetings that we have as a group. Yeah. But, you know, actually just break it down kind of how you do it. Cause I mean, you do such a good job.
So yeah, I think it's really important to get together face to face if possible as a group and talk about expectations, talk about plans, talk about future training, goals, you know, all these things. And the more intentional that is, the better. For one, it's gonna save people time. You know, it's really easy to just kind of have like an idea for a meeting in mind and just be like, yeah, man, we're going to get together and we're going to talk about, you know, let's talk about how we're going to vote or whatever it is. Yeah. And then it just turns into kind of just like a you know, a BS session where you're just chilling and those are great. And you need to have those. And that goes back to what you were just talking about, fellowship, you know, and building camaraderie. Like that should be done in those times where you're like, let's just have a dinner, guys. Like we're not, you know, nothing big. Let's just get together, you know, or hey, let's go meet and let's go out and get lunch or whatever. Or like, hey, let's just get together and watch the UFC fight or like whatever it is, you know? Yeah.
And you may talk about some of that same stuff, but there's a good chance not everyone's there. Yeah. And it's not like a well thought out conversation potentially.
Yeah. But intentional meetings, I think, are they're just that. They're intentional. They're like, we're going to talk about this and this and this. Here's the focus. And I actually make like an outline. I literally make an outline.
You make an outline, and sometimes
pass it out.
You'll make an outline, and then like if there's something that someone wants to bring to the table, you'll be like, hey, let me know if there's something that someone wants to bring up. They bring it up, and you create a spot in the outline for them, and you pass it over to them in that portion, and let them explain kind of, hey, this is kind of what I was thinking. I was thinking about doing this and that. What do you guys think about it? Or let's think about it. Maybe we'll get back on the next meeting and discuss whether we want to do it, pros and cons, kind of. Go into the voting thing, like you could even be like, hey, assign like different people that are running, like, hey, I want you to look up this guy, I want you to look up this gal, I want you to, and everyone comes together, hey, this is what I found on this person. It's kind of the pros and cons, like, hey, they're, anti 2A, or oh yeah, they're really supportive, whatever. So because sometimes you just don't have much information on people, like especially from the voting side. So I think doing that kind of stuff, but yeah, constantly trying to improve. And I think that's a really good way to stay active in constant improvement, is by coming together and creating goals, like you said. Yeah.
And it really, I think that's one of my favorite things to do with our group, because it sets expectations.
It keeps everyone on the same page, man.
Yeah.
And then it kind of takes away that whole, like the dictatorship kind of leadership mentality, where it's just like, oh, I'm just kind of along for the ride. I don't really know what's going on. Like, they don't really keep me in the loop. And that's kind of like, that's not something you want to be involved with anyway, because it's like, man, this kind of sucks. Like,
no, and that won't work good. A real problem, you know.
Yeah, so I think it's an easy way to kind of sort that out, and like give everyone like the ability to put in their opinion and be involved. Be involved with how kind of things that everyone wants to like get involved with. Yeah, I'm just saying involved a whole bunch, but yeah.
No, for sure. I mean, it's super important, and I think it's something that. It might seem weird if it's something you've never done. It might seem kind of weird to start doing.
It is kind of weird at first. I will say that.
Yeah, but it's not. Like, once you do it, it becomes expected. And once you see the benefits of it, of like having intention in your meetings, and again, just to reiterate, this is beyond the fellowship. This is also beyond your training. This isn't like a range day meeting. This is like, we're going to sit down and have a state of the team meeting. Like it's literally like, let's get around the conference table and talk about things.
Yeah.
It's very good to do. It's very valuable, and it makes it possible to explore other ideas. The communication aspect of it alone is so valuable. Every time we've done one of those, guys from within the team are like, thank you for putting those on. You could just tell people have like clarity.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this podcast and you're listening to how to structure a team or a squad and all that stuff, this is the kind of information that you would pass this on to your other team members, by doing an intentional meeting. This is where you pass it and be like, hey, let's think about like where people have pros and cons, or not pros, but like where people would shine in these areas. And let's use those. Let's utilize that, and let's kind of like actually figure out SOPs for our teams. So that's like where SOPs are formed, and it's honestly where a lot of stuff, the behind the scene work stuff, happens.
Yeah,
and it builds camaraderie and fluidity. Like, it's one of, I think, if not the most important thing on here. I mean, it's not the most important thing. I would say it's up there though. I think it's like, in order to be effective, you need it.
Yeah.
I think some form of it. And you can do it over group chat, but I just don't feel like it's as effective as meeting face to face and actually like being able to like kind of like actually all talk to each other.
It's also not as secure. Like, be mindful of your phones. If you're going to have conversations that are intended to be behind closed doors for intentional reasons, then your phones need to be put away and situated in a manner that they cannot receive signal in any way whatsoever, or send signal. So whether that's a Faraday bag or cage, or you leave them in like, out in a car, like away from your conversation. Whatever it is, there's ways you could do it, but be mindful of your security as well.
Yep.
If it's a face-to-face conversation, behind closed doors conversation, then your phone might not be smart to have there either.
Yeah.
So,
and then the last thing I want to talk about, if we're good there, intentional meetings. And this is actually a section that we would like to do, like actually break down a little bit more full on, because this is a lot. I'm just like throwing like rapid fire at you, but just like breaking it down, like good ways to do everything super effectively. But
this is just applicable. I think it's worth having in here. I'm glad you put it in the outline, because I think this is going to help you develop positions. I think ultimately going through this process and having these intentional meetings, fellowshipping, getting to know each other, working together in physical fitness, training constantly, it's going to help you develop where people need to be.
Yeah.
So,
and then the last thing on my list is community involvement.
Yes.
So this can encompass a lot of things, whether it's you're volunteering to go, hey, you know what? Let's go. I heard this person kind of is in a time of need. We're going to go volunteer some time to go like rake their lawn or something crazy, you know? Like,
yeah.
That was just a random thing that I threw out there. But we never did that. But
we would though.
Yeah, we totally would. But so if you need your lawn rake, no, just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. That's not an open invitation.
Yeah.
No, dude.
I mean, you can hit us up and I'll give you a quote, you know.
Yeah, that's messed up.
No, I'm just kidding.
No,
but yeah, just, you know, being involved enough in the community that you're willing to go help people within the community.
And that could be anywhere from lending a helping hand, that could be politically involved.
Yeah. Yep.
Man, this all takes time, so it's hard to do all this. I know you're probably listening to all this like, dude, I don't have enough time in the world to like pull this off.
But make it, because you actually do. Like that's the thing. Like the more of this you start doing, the more habitual it becomes. Like we've become so locally politically involved recently. It's something we've never really done in the past. Like I've always tried to be.
We got big things coming too.
Yeah,
big things coming.
Can't talk about it yet, but
dude, exciting.
Big, super excited. I'm very excited. We've been making waves. I'll put it that way. Unrelated to some of the other stuff we've been doing, but the effort it takes to be involved politically in your local community is not very much. It's actually super simple, and it's amazing how few people do it. And your team should 100%. Like if this is your focus, this whole modern Minuteman thing, like for your community, for your local friends and family, you know, which that directly is affected by the community you live in, then this is stuff you gotta focus on. Like the people that are controlling your day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Making the decisions that manage your community you live in. Like,
yeah, because if your community doesn't trust you either, then what's going to allow them to come help them in a time of need? Like we always talk about, you know, take care of your family, take care of your friends, and then if you have the resources, then you can branch out and take care of your community.
Yeah.
Well, if you have no ties to your community, then it's going to be hard for them to just be like,
who are these guys?
Like a perfect example, and it's super TV related, but like Walking Dead, you know, like there's so many examples of like, hey man, we're actually good people trying to help you guys out, and like they're kind of outcasted. Like, yeah, we don't trust you guys. You guys seem like people that are just going to try to like take advantage of us.
Yeah.
With, you know, so
because people will do that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
100%. So, I think it's important to be involved in your community and don't use. I mean, I'm not even gonna go there, but yeah. Like I feel like I'm giving a narcissistic person the blueprints to like take advantage of someone. But anyways,
I see what you mean. Yeah.
But anyways, yeah. So just be good, moral people. More to come on that as well. But
yeah, a lot more.
We have a lot of podcast plans. We just have to be.
Yeah, sorry for the break, by the way. We just had to buckle down and get stuff done.
Yeah,
we were running behind. We got a lot of things we've been waiting on all at once, and it's just the way it goes. But yeah, we have a lot. We're going to be more regular. We've also been trying to plan out some pretty serious topics, and they're taking longer than we thought. So more to come on that. And a lot of the things we've said in this episode are going to be its own, like the 2-man sniper team thing. That'll be we'll do a whole episode on that, because that is so valuable and there's so much to talk about there. We want to do an entire episode on how to build a good
solid team,
a good team of guys, a good core group, because that is probably the number one question. How do I find people that I can trust to do this stuff with? I can't find anybody. We're going to talk about that. We're going to do it justice. We don't want to just mention it and kind of breeze through it. Like, that's a very important thing.
Yeah.
But this is some of the recipe for that is here that we're talking about. But that going back to the community involvement, I think what you're kind of building up to or getting at is that having a good reputation and a good face in the community is very valuable.
Yeah. And there's a lot of things you can do. I mean, anything from volunteering to being politically involved in a good way. Search and rescue, we've talked about that a little bit. That's a great way to be involved in your community.
Volunteer at the food bank. There's all kinds of like things that it puts you outside of your comfort zone too. And again, if you're doing that stuff together, it's going to make you stronger.
Yep. Yeah, 100%.
It's just valuable.
But yes, like you said, sorry for the long wait on this next podcast. I guess this one should be releasing here soon. But we definitely have more episodes planned. We had a lot of messages of people saying, "Man, I hope I hope you guys aren't done."
Yeah,
it's like, no, we're not done. We still have a ton of stuff that we can't wait to talk about. But
we're just getting started. I mean, this year we've got a lot planned for like educational stuff this year. We've already said that, but there's just been, logistically, sometimes we get a little bogged down. It's me and Steven running this business. We've got some instructors and stuff for our courses, but we got to keep the ship afloat, and and then additionally we're a part of a team too that relies on us, and we rely on them, and we got to make time for that. So there's sometimes the podcast is just one of those things that is, unfortunately, is one of the first things to get kind of put aside. But it's always just temporary. We love doing this, and it's grown a ton. I can't thank everybody enough for listening,
sharing us around and listening. Yeah.
I mean, it's in the last like few months alone, it's been exponential. Like the growth we've seen. We have way more audience listeners than we've ever had. So much so that like people all the time will like contact us, and then they're like, yeah, sorry, it seems like I know you. I feel like I know you from the podcast. I'm always like, whoa. And like, it kind of like catches me off guard, but it's fun, dude. I'm excited. And we've had people ask about a way to, I've had several different people now try to like ask if there's a way for audience members to like come together, and like find each other.
Yeah.
And I think that could be really valuable. Steven and I want to find a good way to do that. Whether it's through Discord or like one of the, like through the Gray Man Network might be a good way to do it. We're going to do something, because it's come up enough now that I think it'd be really cool for people that all listen to the podcast that want to make connections to do it. And then also it'd be cool to have like, not a soundboard really, but a forum where we can discuss this stuff, and we would be involved in it too, and like help answer questions. And then other guys that have a ton of experience that listen to this, that I'm sure have so much they could add.
Yeah.
Or, people from different life paths or different perspectives, that could be so valuable. So we're working on that. I want to, like anything we do, we try to make sure we have it fully figured out before we dive into something, which sometimes can be our worst enemy. But Steven and I like to do our research and be prepared before we just jump into stuff. So, I think this episode, I mean, we covered a lot. It's super in depth. There's a lot to talk about here, but this was actually requested. This was a requested topic.
Yeah, it was.
Someone reached out, requested it, and we were like, that's actually a good idea. So
let's do it.
Yeah. Anything else?
No, thanks for talking with me. It was great to do it.
Sweet.